Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention, please? As we are about to begin, please remain online and please keep your microphone muted. There will be Q&A slots after the discussion sessions. You may post your questions on the chat box. Your cooperation is highly appreciated. The forum is going to start at 2:45 p.m.
Join us to answer questions. Yeah, and just put up your hand, you can join.
Assalamualaikum, selamat petang and a very good afternoon. Yang Berusaha Datin Sri Profesor Dr. Suhaiza Hanim binti Datuk Muhammad Zailani, the Director of Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies. Our honorable panelists, the team, Dr. Edmund Terence Gomez, the former Professor of Political Economy from the Faculty of Business and Economics, University Malaya. Dr. Nurul Huda Muhammad Satta from the Faculty of Business and Economics, University Malaya. Dr. Deboshri Ghosh from the Faculty of Business and Economics, University Malaya. Our state collaborators, Professor Dr. Wan Ahmad Amir Zal bin Wan Ismail, the Director of Institute for Poverty Research and Management, INSPEC, University Malaysia Kelantan. Dr. Firdausi Sufyan, the Deputy Director of Academic Affairs, University Technology Mara Sabah. And Dr. Rosita Hamdan from the Faculty of Economics and Business, University Malaysia Sarawak. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the forum, Rethinking the Institutional Architecture of Malaysia's Agriculture Sector. This forum will interactively discuss issues related to poor policy outcomes in the rural-based agro-food sector, despite having in place a well-constructed public infrastructure, as well as numerous mechanisms to channel supports to SMEs. Our presenters will also discuss institutional issues impeding executions of strategies and incentives deployed, and to provide policy recommendations to enhance food productions. Ladies and gentlemen, for your information, this project will not be successful without the funding we received from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, or CAS. We'd also like to thank Ms. Miriam Fisher, the Director of CAS Malaysia Office, and Ms. Chen from CAS Malaysia for their continuous support throughout the project. We want to thank the Ungku Aziz Center for Development Studies for all the support we received. Before we begin, let me briefly introduce you to our team. From we have Dr. Edmund Terence Gomez, Dr. Nurul Huda Muhammad Satta, Dr. Deboshri Ghosh, Dr. Elia Nabila Abdul Bahri, Dr. Adila Abdul Ghaffur, and myself. We have been working with 4 state collaborators headed by Professor Wan Ahmad Amizan, representing Kelantan and Terengganu, Dr. Firdausi Sufyan representing Sabah, and Dr. Rosita Hamdan representing Sarawak. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Deboshri Ghosh as the first presenter to introduce the project. Dr. Deboshri is a research consultant and an adjunct lecturer at the Faculty of Business and Economics, University Malaya. Please welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Diana, for this wonderful introduction of our project and all the teammates. What I'm going to introduce right now is how this project was perceived and the methodology of this project. Now, this project was conceived when the entire world was going through COVID-19, and due to the emergence of COVID-19 global pandemic, it disrupted the Malaysia's food ecosystem, majorly because there was a heavy reliance of agricultural imports, which is even seen now. The staple food consumption, like rice, currently has an SSR of only 65, which used to be 70 in 2017. Despite serious focus on food production, since the 9th Malaysia Plan, that is since 2006, the country is still grappling with food uncertainty. Heavy reliance on food imports, coupled with grave structural problems in the agri-food sector, Malaysia is now confronted with a situation which needs urgent solutions. Given this background, the puzzle that baffled us was, why has there been such poor policy outcomes in rural-based agri-food sector when the government has in place a well-structured public infrastructure and numerous mechanisms to support the agro-based SMEs? To investigate this puzzle, we were debating on what methodology would be the best. Now, what the conclusion that we came to was we would combine qualitative and quantitative study and primary and a secondary data study. So data was collected not only at the secondary level, but also through primary surveys. By secondary data, I meant we looked at the federal and state policies, past and present. We looked at the decision making, how decisions are made and implemented, and also looked at the budgetary expenditure, if there was any available at the federal and the state level. Now, for the primary survey, we conducted interviews and focus group discussions. These were conducted for three categories, that is farmers, statutory bodies and state agencies, and also food agro SMEs. Now, moving on to the actual methodology, we looked into the FAO documents and looked into the Food and Agricultural Policy Classification, also known as FAPTA. Under FAPTA, there are three classifications of policy analysis. One is consumer-oriented, producer-oriented, and trade-oriented. Since our focus was SMEs, farmers, and agencies, we looked into the producer-oriented segment of this policy analysis. That is, we looked into production support, market management, natural resource management, and most importantly, the institutional and organizational measures to support the entire structure. We also looked into the policy guideline series of FAO, which direct and give a good structure about how such a research should take place. So we took this research up under 4 steps. First, we mapped the institutional landscape of policy implementation. Then we analyze the policy implementation framework, considering what comes first and which ministries are connected to 4 segments of the government. Then we reviewed the outcome of policies on rural economies. This was done at the federal and the state level. And finally, to understand where things can be improved, where bottlenecks can be smoothened out, we went to the ground, we did interviews and FGDs to understand the scope of improvement and key lessons. During our sampling procedure, we looked into the International Standard of Industrial Classification, Revision 4, that is the latest revision. We looked into 2 major segments. One is agriculture, and the second segment is manufacturing. Under agriculture, we looked into the division of crop and animal production, hunting, and related activities. For considering uniformity, we did not consider forestry and fishing in our segmentation. Under the manufacturing division, we looked into manufacturing of food products and certain categories which are listed on your screen right now. Now, coming to primary data collection, one of our main problems was selecting the states, the kind of states we wanted to investigate this problem. One major criteria of selecting the states was ensuring a good geographical spread. So we looked into 4 states, Sabah, Sarawak, Kelantan, and Terengganu. Sabah and Sarawak, of course, representing, consisting of the eastern side of Malaysia, and Kelantan, Terengganu consisting of the west side of Malaysia. Now, another important criteria for selecting these states, especially Kelantan and Terengganu in West Malaysia, is the existence of already well-established agencies. So Kelantan has Kasada and Terengganu has Ketenga for supporting agriculture and agriculture farmers. Now, once we had sampled these states, we went on to discussing how the interviews would be held and what the sample size would be. Next, please. Across all states and all categories, that is farmers, SMEs, and agencies, and across 4 states, we intended to do 60 farmers, 60 SMEs, and 30 agencies. In total, we managed to do 60 farmers, 59 SMEs, and 27 agencies. We personally feel it is a big achievement, having said that, because we did this field work during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I must congratulate our state collaborators for actually going out and doing these in-depth interviews and focus group discussions. Now, the primary data was collected in 2 steps. The first step, which was done by our state collaborators, was through focus group discussions and also in-depth interviews under each category. After the first cycle of focus group discussions and in-depth interviews, we analyzed the data. We tried to understand what actually the problem is. To ensure that the analysis and our interpretation of the data is correct, we went back to the field and we conducted town hall meetings wherein we called our stakeholders again to have a meeting with us to better understand. During this process, we used the observation method and visited some of the fields and spoke to them personally to understand what their problem was. Analysis was conducted using qualitative grouping by themes and also by case study approach at the state level, considering the region's importance. At each state, the regions selected were selected out of importance, mass production, case study. If a region has a lot of potential, but it is not doing very good, those regions were also selected. More about these would be elaborated by our very efficient state collaborators who actually went out on the field and spoke to the farmers. That's all from now, and moving on to the state collaborators now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deboshree, for the very interesting presentations. Next, I would like to invite our first state collaborator, Dr. Firdausi Sufyan, to present his findings from Sabah. Dr. Firdausi is a political economist, public policy analyst, and a deputy rector at UITM Sabah. His work focuses primarily on economic development, government transformation programs, and policy development for government clients and also the United Nations. Please welcome Dr. Firdausi.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. MC, and thank you so much for this session. And hang on. Oops. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much once again to the Ms. MC. So today I will talk about the Sabah, the finding that we get from this research. We're thinking of institutional architecture of Malaysia agriculture sector. So as you all know that Sabah is one of the economic powerhouse when it comes to resources. The state ranked top 5 contribution to the country's GDP for the past decades, and Sabah is the top three main contributor to agriculture to the country. You know, you're looking at 16%, and second after Sarawak for the past decades as well. Now, of course, when we talk about agriculture here, mostly industrial crops. Now, anyway, well, this research is timely and necessary because as Dr. Deb mentioned just now, when we conduct this research, it was during the on and off lockdown. And at the same time, now we have food security. So this one highlight the importance of how the role of institution plays so important when it comes to food security. Yeah. So next, please. So in Sabah, technically we look at paddy and vegetable. So so there are 3 regions that we look at: Kota Belud, Tambunan, Kundasang. So in general, just briefly briefly to tell you that vegetable is not really a big problem in Sabah because it's quite stable, all right? But on the other hand, for paddy, it's a bit unstable. It's our staple food, but it's not stable because we import so much, yeah? Because even though we are the main contributor of agriculture, but when it comes to import, food is the top 3 import in Sabah, worth 4 billion. So this includes rice as well, right? So of course, Kota Belud, we have to focus on that area because that is what the so-called Jelapang Padi Sabah. Yeah. Can we move to the next slide, please? Now, the state policy formulations and implementation framework. So as you all know that Malaysia is a federation. So, but I would say from this research, I would consider as an asymmetrical federation because a lot of those functions, lies upon the federal government. All right. So in terms of allocation, infrastructure, some fiscal aspect as well. But even though it is quite centralized in many aspects, but land is under the purview of the state. So therefore, when it comes to, well, there's still some policy space for the state government to formulate their own policy. So in Sabah context, we also have our agriculture policy as well, which you will see later right? But just so you know, it's very asymmetrical in a way that when I say asymmetrical, because it's very centralized, a lot of things happen at federal level, while the state do have a bit of autonomy in a way to come up with their own policy. But still, when it comes to fiscal and the broad aspect of infrastructure development, it always lies at the federal, right? So the Sabah agriculture sector, of course, is under the purview of MAFI Sabah. So the Sabah Ministry of Agriculture and Fishery, the main function, of course, is to develop agriculture, formulate policy, and then make sure that all the states' land are fully utilized. And at the same time, I think this is the important part when it comes to allocations of resources, investment, and also make the extension services, helping those farmers, SMEs. So these are the main functions of the Sabah agriculture. MAFI, right? Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So the state policy formulation and implementation. So obviously it's under the, you have MAFI, the big umbrella, which this is state level, yeah? And then you have the Department of Agriculture. And then under the Department of Agriculture, of course, under MAFI, there are many agencies. You get fisheries and other departments, but today we're just gonna look at, because we talk about paddy and other, we're talking about food crops, yeah? So Department of Agriculture, and of course the Department of Irrigation and Drainage is also under the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries. And at state level, federal agency in Sabah. So of course you have MAFI here, but the one that facilitate MAFI is the Lembaga Pertubuhan Peladang, or LPP. So this LPP, their function is quite broad and very important. As a matter of fact, if you look at the development of agriculture, right? Because LPP, later we will discuss this more in a bit. They have PPK, the Pertubuhan, Pertubuhan, hang on, what's the name again? PPN, sorry. So you have this Pertubuhan Peladang Kawasan, and then you have the Pertubuhan Peladang Negeri. So it's all under the umbrella of LPP. And of course, they have this IADA, Integrated Agriculture Development Area. This is very important, especially when we talk about paddy development. So you have that in Sabah, you have that in Sarawak as well. So these are the two main agencies that help facilitate when it comes to agriculture development. So can we move to the next slide, please? Now, just to give you a broad idea of the policy, because this is very important to look at the timelines of relevant policy when we talk about agriculture. So like I said, the federal government play a very important role when paving the policy and also configuring policy for the entire country. But at the same time, the state level, especially at Sabah, we do have our own policy as well. But the policy only come out after 30 years ago. We come up with our first policy called Sabah Agriculture Policy. The objective is always in line with the first National Agriculture Policy, right? So usually when Sabah come up with their policy, there's always in line with the federal policy as well. But of course, there are certain things that we focus on, but overall, for instance, like we want to achieve our SSL, like 60%. This one is the same with the first National Agriculture Policy as well. So we emphasize on food production. Okay, that was the first objective of Sabah Agriculture Policy, and then we moved to a second Sabah Agriculture Policy. So this one is to maximize and optimize utilizations of resources, similar with the second agriculture policy as well. And of course, to increase the domestic food production and specifically paddy production. Just to bring you back the, this is like 20 plus years ago. So this is where we start to talk about food crisis. Yeah, I think after 1997, when we have the food crisis, so we start to talk about food production and also utilizations of resources. So again, we want to achieve, when we talk about rice, Sabah want to achieve 60% SSL. Then after that, we have the third Sabah Agriculture Policy. Again, food become very, preoccupied most of the policy making domain. And so the policy agenda is crucial at that time. We talk about food security, right? So at the same time, we want to increase the farmer income as well to 4,000. So this is what the objective all about in third Sabah agriculture policy, which is also in line with the national agriculture policy as well, again to achieve 60%. And after that, we have Sabah agriculture blueprint, which is basically an extension of the third agriculture policy as well. If you look at the policy objective, is quite similar. And again, we want to achieve 60%. And of course, we have the Sabah Maju Jaya plan. So under that Sabah Maju Jaya plan, reiterate the same thing as well. And the national agro food policy too. We adopt some of those aspirations in the policy incorporated in Sabah Maju Jaya plan. Can we move to the next slide, please? So these are the policy enabler that we look at, all the based on our policy analysis. Yeah. So from SAP 1 until SAP Sabah Agriculture Blueprint. So those green is all the policy enabler, what they do, what the state government actually do, and help to facilitate food sector and production capability. So so if you look at the green, so when we tick, so those are the things that actually what the state actually try to help those farmers, SMEs. Yeah. Can we move to the next slide, please? So these are some basic statistics. So we just show you from 1980s until 2020. So SSL was really high back in the, 50 years ago. And then after that, of course, just to give you a bit of history. So that was back then in 1980s when it is still high, because if you look at the subsequent year 1981, when we start to focus on industrial crops, which is palm oil back then. So that's why it started to dwindle, right? But over the years, if you look at it, Sabah, the SSL for rice, of course, is always maintained at 20+% because of the priority over industrial crops, particularly on palm oil, right? So can we move to the next slide, please? So this is Malaysia SSL. Well, Malaysia is all right so far, but just to show you the Malaysia is around this percentage, but Sabah, even though we have our own agriculture policy, but actually we have yet to achieve that 60% SSL, right? So can we move to the next one, please? So these are the key statistics that we show. The import of rice. So if you look at it, we import a lot of rice, okay? So as the population grow, the import grow as well. But the production at the local level at Sabah, all right, has never expanded. Later you will see the statistic. So this is so we depend so much. So that's why we have this deficit when it comes to food, particularly on rice. Okay, so can we move to the next one, please? So these are the paddy plantation area. Of course, Kota Belud is the highest because that is the Jelapang Padi for Sabah, right? So can we move to the next one, please? Now, this is the paddy plantation area. Now, if you look at it, we want to achieve 60%, right? To achieve 60%, the plantation area cannot, plantation area can be 39,000. So because if it's 39,000, it's only 24% of SSL. So you need to double that, actually, to get that approximately 60%, close to double. So Sabah did introduce later, we'll discuss that later. So introduce another 10,000 hectare for paddy production, and also another 10,000 hectare at Lahad Datu for food crops and also paddy plantations as well. So that one is just 10, so you have another 20,000. Basically, you need more land than that to increase production, right? So can we move to the next slide, please? Now, so these are the findings that we get. All right. So this finding, like what Dr. Deb mentioned just now, so we have presented, there's a town hall session that we presented to the farmers, including state agency and as well as SMEs representative as well. So what are the key problem that we found that we found out from this research is that for farmers, yeah, so it's limited government assistance. As you all know that for the past decades, right, the key assistance that they give is subsidies, pesticides, and fertilizer, right? So basically, farmer unable. So these three, which is very important, it's fundamental. But for you to expand production, it's not just these three aspects, right? So you need like technology, increase productivity, and as well as technology. But continuing such assistance for the past 3-4 decades, it doesn't really help to expand. So you can see from the statistic data just now, as a matter of fact, the hectare that the plantation area has dwindled a little bit. Yeah, and at the same time, also the farmers were talking about the machinery for plowing, so it's quite limited. Sometimes, as an alternative, they have to get it from private sector. Private here means sometimes middlemen. Yeah, so this is where the you have the what do you call debt traps. Sometimes, I mean, they give you credit, so you have to sell them back, and then they will they somehow lock you to make sure that all your produce are given to them because you know you owe them some money, right? Now, at the same time, lack of attention to the welfare and development of the rice farmer, because if you look at it, the farmer never actually achieved 4,000 ringgit a month, because we do have a policy saying, sorry, we do have a policy that we want to achieve we want to increase the farmers' income, but we have yet to achieve that. All right. Secondly, it's about marketing. So marketing is always problematic because every time when we talk to the farmer, this is what they say, especially the beras keladi. So this beras keladi is, you know, the aroma is really nice and it has high value, but AIDA is doing it to help farmers, but the degree, the effort, the effort to expand of this beras keladi still remain inadequate, right? Because it's not just AIDA, it's also state level, and also the state level agency got to work together to expand this. Yes, they do. I mean, some of these beras keladi, you know, some of them, they're proper packaging. So when you properly package it, and then it will help. So is that my time? Right. I cannot see that. Another 5 minutes, yeah, right. And after that, the existence of middleman intervention, I think this one is, you know, I think it's a broken record, because a lot of it, if you look at most of the literature, they talk about the problem with middleman intervention. And if you go to the farmers, yes, it's true. They say the same thing as well. And this is actually does not help to expand the paddy production. And then after that, please to the next slide, please. All right. So the key issue for SME, obviously, marketing is assisted by AIDA. Therefore, the state government is not really involved much. All right. So some of those SME who are involved in beras keladi, so they can't really expand that. Right. And then they're dependent on the rice mill due to the price. So rice mill, they do have certain price control, yeah. But I think the key for SME that we found out is the modernization aid. So when you talk about expansions of production, it's the supply side of the policy where the government have to help in the input of those technology, and then the input of raw material to expand technology is not really there or adequate to help them to expand that. right? So technology, now we talk about drone technology, we talk about big data analytics in incorporating in agriculture sector, particularly on rice, but it's not really happening. You know, it's there, but in terms of extension services for SME, it's still not adequate, right? So next one, please. So this is a key issue of indicated by agency policy. It's based on extension service. So the state government, on the other hand, sometimes because of the priority over industrial commodities, because industrial commodities obviously is the cash cow of the state. You can see that it's like 2 billion for income for the state government if you look at the budget this year. Yeah, so rice wasn't really you need a long gestation period, and so the maintenance of rice is different as compared to palm oil. All right, so palm oil have better income. So they do have when it comes to staff, they have inadequate staff. Because of inadequacy, therefore they cannot provide that extensive services for the farmers and SME. So pretty much also in terms of funding as well, they do have limited funding. Farmers do not receive technical services provided. So this is an agency problem where the farmers say that they don't have much, all right, technical services provided by the state agency. So these two obviously affecting the agriculture development, especially paddy production. So next one, please. I think another 5 minutes to go. And then another one, that key lesson that we learned is there's also patronage issue. All right, even though this this is interesting to highlight. All right, sometimes you need a good relationship, all right, to get assistance. Right, when you have a good relationship here means, you know, with the state agency, the head of village who look after those farmers, you know, he needs you need to have a good relationship with the head of village, and also good relationship with the state government, the personnel, or sometimes with some political elite. So for you to get more basically supports, yeah. So because of this, you have this patronage issue. It somehow give unequal distributions of aids and services to some extent. So this is the problem. And obviously the machinery is quite limited. So you have a lot of farmers, but machinery for plowing is limited. So it's very important for you to have network, cable, so friends, right? In order for you to get that, to use that facilities. Right? So next one, please. So obviously it's a mismatch priority. So this one is worth to highlight because of the industrial, because the attention mostly focus on the palm oil plantation, because obviously it gives a lot of, it's an export earning number one, fast money, and then the demand is always high. And of course, the maintenance somehow, when we talk about oil palm plantation, somehow is easier because there's a lot of technology. There's a lot of buyers when it comes to palm oil. So somehow paddy is not really the main thing that we talk about in the policy making institution. So that's why you have a mismatch priority. But this does not mean that the policymaker does not pay attention. What there other fruits like vegetable, banana, all these are still a important agenda when it comes to food sector. But it's just that the effort to expand food sector, particularly on paddy, is still limited. Right.
Sorry, Dr. Fidausi, if you can speed up. It's just like 1 minute left.
All right. Okay. So I'm gonna conclude everything. Yeah. So just go to the next slide, please. So this is the recommendation. So basically, what we need is food first policy in Sabah after the pandemic. Obviously, we need this, and then the zoning land for food-based production. Well, now they have it in Lahadatu, the recent one, but we still think that if it's 10,000 hectares, is still not enough. And obviously enhance research development. But for the past 10 years, if you look at the budget, the government only allocate 500,000 plus for agriculture sector. So out of 500,000 plus, only 15% actually goes to R&D. And this R&D are mostly on palm oil, not really on food. So with the surplus budget, so the state government can actually increase the money for research and development, particularly on food. So I guess I use up my time now, right? Thank you so much. Oh, okay. Oh, it's okay. I think strengthening financial support, I guess, in terms of research and development, technologies. I think the government can increase. They can use the state fund. Not necessarily you have to depend on federal government, even though they have a lot of money. But the state can, when you manage it well, target strategically what sort of technology that you want to that they want to expand. They can, all right. And extension service, obviously the state government personnel, all right, you need to, if you want to expand, then you need more people to actually focus on paddy and food crops. Yeah. And then the next one, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Firdausi, for the very interesting findings from Sabah, and I'm sorry to cut you off. Ladies and gentlemen, next I would like to invite Dr. Rosita Hamdan to present her findings from Sarawak. Dr. Rosita is a senior lecturer from the Faculty of Economics and Business, University Malaysia, Sarawak. Her research interest lies in environmental and climate change economics, agriculture economics, and development economics. Please welcome Dr. Rosita.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Diana. Can you hear me? Is that clear? Dr. Diana, can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. Sorry. Okay. Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Okay. So I'm Dr. Rosita Hamdan, and actually we are doing this study with my other colleagues. That is Miss Audrey Liwan from the same faculty. So for today, I will present our findings regarding on the topics of this rethinking of institutional architecture of Malaysia's agriculture sector for the case of Sarawak. Okay, next. Okay, for this study, we actually proposing for two main area in Sarawak. That is for the northern Sarawak. So we are looking into the rural area that is including Bario and Nong Saridan. Then for the southern Sarawak, we have cater the urban and suburban area that is including Samarahan, Siburan, and Nundu. Why we are choosing these two areas? Because we want to see some of those important elements, because of, as you can see here, they are in terms of the geographical factors, these two regions are actually representing the urban, suburban, and urban areas of the Sarawak. And after that, we also want to see in terms of the infrastructure conditions, okay? And we want to see the differences between the urban and rural area in terms of the transportation facilities, roads, delivery of related information, and also the marketing routes. Further on that, we also want to look into the agricultural supply chain, and also the accessibility of agricultural informations and also assistance, and also the disclosure and accessibility of informations on agriculture related to policies and food safety. Okay, so for this study, we had collected 33 informations from the farmers, and then 19 from the agro SMEs, and also 10 informants from the agencies. Then for the products, we are looking into two parts of the product. The first one is agriculture products, looking at the paddy and pineapples. And then the other one is SMEs grow product, that is including the variety of chips that is based on the plants and fisheries base. Then cake and pastries, traditional kuih, marinade sauce, chili, pineapples, base product, and goat's milk. Okay, next. Okay, before I go further into this state policy formulation and implementation framework, I would like to mention that in Sarawak, we are a bit different in terms of the coordinations of the agriculture sector itself. because of at the federal level, we are actually follow the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industries, that is MAFI. And then for the state level, we are having Ministry of Modernizations of Agriculture and Regional Development Sarawak, that is MANRED. So under MANRED, we have a few agencies that having a very important role, especially the Department of Agriculture, Sarawak. Then we also have the Department of Veterinary Services, then Sarawak Land Development Board, and Sarawak Land Consolidation and Rehabilitation Authority, SALCRA. Then besides that, because of, as you can see, the Sarawak area is quite wide or big as compared to the other states. Then we also have the development corridor under RICODA. So we have the Upper Rejang Development Agencies, URDA, Highland Development Agency, and also Northern Region Development Agencies that focusing on the development activities for the urban area. Okay, then for Sarawak, we don't have any specific policies, I can say, but we actually follow the national policies. Before we have the national agro-food policies, where also follow the national agriculture policies. Okay, then after that we move to this national agro-food policies, starting from 2011 to 2020. Then at the same time, we have the national commodity policies at the same period. Then in the middle, Sarawak has introduced the Sarawak Digital Economy Strategy from 2018 to 2022 that also included the aspect of the agriculture itself. Then now we are into the National Agro-Food Policy that is from 2021 to 2030 and next. And at the same time, Sarawak also have the development recovery policies that is after the COVID-19, also cater from 2021 to 2030. Next, please. Okay, so under this Sarawak Digital Economy Strategy, actually the Sarawak government, they are looking into how to digitalize the agriculture sector by introducing the smart farming. Okay, next. Next, please. Okay, so then in the post-COVID-19 development strategy 2030, the state government also focus on the agriculture side, where they aim to commercialize the agriculture sector to capitalize on modern farming and global partnership to accelerate productivity and growth to support higher value added downstream food processing, especially for export market. So in this, the state actually aims to achieve more than 70% in terms of SSL in the rice production, and also they are targeted for the 2 billion for the state surplus food export in terms of the net export, and 100% certified and also sustainable food production. Next. Okay, but in the case of Sarawak, it's not like Sabah. We don't have any agricultural blueprint yet. So, but the state government, we are concerned about that, and I believe that they are working on that because of it's important in order to further improve that or enhance the development of the agriculture of the sector. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the timeline of the relevant policies that, as I mentioned just now, most of it also had been explained by Dr. Fidausi, but it's just that for the Sarawak, we have the 2 other policy or plan, that is Sarawak Digital Economy Strategy and Sarawak Post-COVID-19 Development Strategy, that also including the plan for the agriculture sector. Next. Okay, so this is a key statistic for the Sarawak. So we are looking from the 2018 to 2021, the latest one. So as we can see, in terms of the agriculture sector itself, the growth is quite low, where we have the negative 1.4 in terms of the growth of the agriculture sector in 2018. Then it's improved a bit in 2019, that is, but the growth is still deficit at negative 0.2%, with the value added at 12.1%. Okay, the next. However, in 2020, because of the COVID-19 itself, then the growth of the agriculture sector is actually decreasing to negative 10%. Okay, then but it's improving a bit in last year, 2021, where we can see that here there is the growth for the negative 3.2% with the value added 14.4 billions. Although it's still low, but seems that it's improving as compared to the during the COVID-19. Okay, next. Okay, so this is the chart that showing about the growth and also the value added of the Sarawak state agricultural sector. Okay, next. Okay, same also for this is for 2021, the latest one. Then we are still waiting for the 2022 lah, soon. Okay, but in Sarawak, as what I can say, although Sarawak agriculture sector can be said has the fourth important sector in the state, but in terms of the labor force, we actually the agriculture sector is the second main involvement with the labor force in the Sarawak. So it means that majority of the household here is still need this agriculture sector for the employment, right? Okay, next. Okay, then we move into the findings from our study. Okay, so for the Sarawak, as I mentioned just now, I separated it between the two areas for the farmers, that is rural area and also suburban and urban area. So for the urban areas, we found that most of the farmers, they are not aware with the policies actually related to them, but they are concerned on the role of executor to assist in tackle the production issues in the, at the field. And also they are concerned about how the policy can be transferable into the real field. Okay, then the other issues is about the high agriculture input price and cost. As we are concerned, this is a quite big issues and also the important issues now, especially after the COVID-19, where the cost for the agriculture inputs like fertilizers, pesticides are increasing. Okay, then after that, the agriculture subsidy sometimes is not appropriate to their needs. So for example, in the case that we studied, we found last time when we did the interview in the barrio, because the barrio, they are very having a very good potential land for the paddy production. So they're mentioning that the fertilizer maybe not very important for them, okay, in terms of the subsidy, but they really needs in terms of the technology or in terms of the technical assistance. Okay, so that is some of the things that we see here. Okay, then the other thing is about the capable, they are actually capable to produce a high volume of the agriculture products. We are having a lots of potential land for the agriculture, but because of the poor infrastructure on channeling to the market, it's caused a very huge food loss actually. Then that is why the farmers try to limit their total production. Okay, next. Okay, then because of that poor infrastructure, they need to do or to sell their production by themselves or through their family or friends who work or stay in the city. And then they are also looking into the implementations of the agriculture collection center, because that will be for them a good idea in order to outsourcing their production to the city or maybe to the near urban areas, so that they can market it. And also the improvement of the roads or other transportation modes. As you can see, especially from the rural area, some of them, they use the flight services to transfer the production to the city. Okay, and then in terms of the age factor of the farmers, it limits the dynamic of the agricultural productions. And from our interviews, some of the elderly people, they really want to promote that the agriculture sector has a big potential to the youth. That's why, although they are very old, they are trying to develop some of the agriculture project at the area, so that they can encourage the youth to return back to the kampung and also do the same involved with the agriculture sector. Okay, then the other thing is about the poor attitude, because not all, but some of them still depending on the subsidy and assistance. All right, next. For the suburban and urban area, okay, this cater from the area of Samarahan, Lundu, and also Siburan. First is about the role of executor or maybe agencies not effective in the certain areas. Not all, but certain areas. For example, they may only active, I mean for the staff, going to the ground, they're only active when the application of subsidy is open, when they have to inform the farmers to apply and so on, or maybe just during the harvesting, okay? Then there's no proper channel to complain or to seek for the advice for their production problems. And they are also need to self-market of their product, and also there are also poor distribution channel of the product. Okay, then next. Next. All right. So the other thing is about the land use conflict, okay, because of, as you can see, there are lots of potential land of agriculture, but the thing is they are actually compete with the commercial area development. So that is one of the issues that being happen here. And some of the farmers also need on the advanced agriculture technology to save energy and also produce efficiently, because of most of them are from the elderly people. So they are actually really want to involve and still want to active in the agriculture sector, but because of their age, okay, it's limits in terms of their productivity, but they believe that when there is advanced technology introduced to the field, then it can help them to produce more. Okay. Then high agriculture input price and cost also influence to the the decisions of the farmers whether to continue or not to involve with the production, especially for the paddy production. Next. Okay, then for the SMEs, as we can see, the issues is not so big as compared to the agriculture side. I mean, for the farmers, there are only things that we notice that there are most of the SME entrepreneurs, they are actually mentioned that there are a shortage in terms of the raw materials, because most of them are depends on the agriculture production, okay, in order to produce their products. And at the same time, because of the high price or cost of the input in the agriculture itself, then they have to also to pay for the high price for the input for their products. I mean, for the raw materials. Okay. Then the other thing is about for certain type of SME, having limitation for the proper channel to get the advice informations on their production issues. That's also happen. And the other thing is about the logistic and marketing issues on distributing and selling the product to the local market as well as to the outside. Okay, so that is also one of the concern that raised by the SMEs entrepreneurs. Okay, next. Then for the agencies, since Sarawak, we have two ministries that controlling the agriculture sector. We have federal and also the state level. Then we found that there is no strategic coordination between the federal and state agencies. So they are misunderstanding what is actually their role, okay, in terms of developing the agriculture activities or project itself. Then different strategies run the policy separately and follow their own ways, okay? And sometimes they are also offering similar type agriculture assistance and need to screen the participant applications to avoid the redundancy. Okay, next. Then in the case of Sarawak, of course, some of the projects are from the federal agencies, but they also depends on the state, because of in Sarawak, the Department of Agriculture is actually playing a big role in the agriculture development. So they're still depending on the state agencies in order to indicate the participants of the project sometimes. Okay, then the officers also confused which policies should be prioritized and applied in their management activities, because of there are two ministries that controlling to the state. Okay, then next. Okay, from this study, the key lessons that we found from those issues in terms of the confusion in terms of the prioritized policy, how to manage and how to execute the policy to the ground. And then there's also the issues of the poor assistance from the responsible staff or agency, especially to the very outskirt area, because of is what we found that most of the household there, especially at the rural area, they don't know who is actually the agriculture assistance that actually having a role in order to assist them in terms of this sector. Okay, then some subsidy may not relevant to the certain farmers and also the SME entrepreneurs. Then the poor infrastructure related to the agriculture activities such as Orchard Road to channel the agriculture and SMEs output to the outside market. Because of in this case, some of the farmers said that yeah, they have the potential to produce the agriculture products, but because of most of the farms are located not near to the main road, so it's also affect in terms of channeling the product to the outside. Okay, right, next. Then in terms of agricultural collection centers, it will be a good initiative that can help the suburban and urban area farmers to channel or distribute the inputs. Then it's also important to promote the sector to the youth. Okay, because of most of the participants of the farmers here are actually from the elderly age. Okay. Then in terms of technology advancement in the sector, it's actually required and they are really hope for that. Then conflict of the land use for the food crops and commercial area development also need to be catered. Right. Next.
Dr. Rosita, can you please speed up because the time is up actually. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.
This will be the last. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
So for the scope of improvement, there are some recommendations. First is in terms of there is a need of improvement in terms of communication channel, especially the communication between the federal state agencies, executors and farmers and also entrepreneurs. Then it's a need to identify the appropriate assistance to achieve the effective program for the agriculture and also the SMEs. Then there's also a need to promote to the youth to involve in the sector. Maybe via this digital economy, it can attract more youth to join to this sector. Then there's also a need to improve further the basic infrastructure in agriculture sector. Then the other recommendation is about the aggregate output collection center, especially to the rural areas, so that can help in order to enhance the agriculture sector. Then technology advancement in agriculture and also controlling cost or price of agriculture inputs and raw materials. Okay, next. Okay, so that's all for me. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rosita, for the very interesting findings. Next, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Wan Ahmad Amirzal to present his findings from Kelantan and Terengganu. Professor Wan is the Director of Institute for Poverty Research and Management (INSPEC) from University Malaysia Kelantan. His research mostly emphasizes on aspects of exclusion and inclusions in the community and development plans based on community capital amongst the vulnerable and minority communities. Please welcome Prof.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum, selamat petang. Boleh clear? Dengar ke? Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Diana.
Yes.
Inshallah, today I will present our finding in Kelantan and Terengganu. But first of all, please apologize me. I will present in Malay, but my slide in English. Okay, next. Okey, sebetulnya macam biasa, macam research yang telah dilaksanakan, kajian telah dilaksanakan di Sabah dan Sarawak. Kajian ini adalah untuk membantu bersama dengan UM dan juga KAS untuk melihat isu berkaitan dengan polisi dan juga berkaitan dengan food security, khasnya di Kelantan dan Terengganu. Tapi insyaAllah sekali lagi saya akan present berkaitan dengan Kelantan terlebih dahulu. Dan secara umumnya kajian ini fokusnya adalah untuk menilai, melihat balik tentang isu polisi di Malaysia berkaitan dengan perancangan, pelaksanaan dan juga pemantauan di Kelantan. Kemudian mungkin ada sedikit cadangan, mungkin nak kata cadangan secara keseluruhan tu mungkin tidak. Sebab polisi berkaitan pertanian, peternakan dan juga food security yang terbaru ini sebenarnya telah pun dilancarkan. Jadi kalau kita kata untuk menilai secara forward, secara terus begitu, bagi saya tidak adil pada polisi yang sedia ada. Jadi apa-apa pun insya-Allah saya nampak berdasarkan hasil kajian yang telah diperoleh ini, insya-Allah akan menjadi satu input polisi yang sangat baiklah. Dan saya pertama sebelum tu saya ingin ucap tahniah jugalah kepada UM dan juga KAS kerana bagi satu isu yang sangat bagus. Apabila saya menilai isu berkaitan dengan kemiskinan, sudah pasti kemiskinan dan food security ini bersaling kait terus. Sebab sebelum ini saya dan tim juga rasa bersyukur diberi peluang bersama UM ini kerana bila kami lihat tentang kemiskinan, selama ini memang kami lihat orang miskin biasanya dia akan terlibat dengan aktiviti-aktiviti yang levelnya dalam bracket lah, level ni walaupun tidak sedap diguna, level bawah begini. Tapi bagi saya bukanlah jadi petani ini satu perkara yang tidak baik, sangat baik. Mereka lah sepatutnya ke depan dan sepatutnya mereka yang patut kita bangga dan juga sepatutnya mereka lah yang sepatutnya kita fokus. Contoh saya mudah, walaupun perkara ini biasa saya sebut, tapi ada logiknya apabila kita tengok contoh nelayan kita, walaupun laut jauh sikit berkaitan dengan pertanian, nelayan kita sedangkan mereka menceburi ataupun terlibat dalam aktiviti yang bersifat fundamental, yang basic, tapi mereka tetap miskin. Manakala orang lain, contohnya walaupun bunyinya macam taklah signifikan sangat, berkaitan dengan kosmetik misalnya, mereka kaya raya. Sedangkan kosmetik bukan semua orang pakai dan bukanlah benda yang basic atau fundamental. Sedangkan berkaitan pertanian, peternakan dan juga isu berkaitan dengan perikanan adalah perkara yang basic dan fundamental. Tapi mereka tetap miskin. Bukan setakat kemiskinan, rupa-rupanya kalau kita lihat sejarah lama Malaysia, bukan setakat Malaysia, banyak negara-negara lain termasuklah negara China, dia banyak fokus kepada bagaimanakah nak dikaitkan dengan kemiskinan dan juga food security. Maksud saya food security di sini, mereka cuba linkkan bersama, hubungkan bersama, maksud gerak secara bersama. Dan kalau kita juga meninjau kembali sejarah Malaysia, kita lihat Malaysia juga terlalu serius, sangat serius, bukan terlalu, sangat serius berkaitan dengan food security dan juga berkaitan makan pertanian. Contohnya kita pernah ada buku hijau yang mana fokusnya berkaitan dengan pertanian dan juga jaminan makanan juga. Tapi mungkin dianggap dengan beberapa siri polisi berterusan ataupun polisi-polisi perancangan jangka panjang lain, dia agak sedikit sudah ketinggalan ataupun tidak lagi satu perkara yang fokus yang penting pada negara. Tapi alhamdulillah akhirnya kita kini lebih sedar sebenarnya isu berkaitan makanan, pertanian itu adalah satu perkara yang wajar kita fokus untuk pembangunan negara dan kita pergi terus ke hadapan. Okey, berkaitan dengan kajian ini, sekali lagi fokus pada kajian ini, sebagaimana telah dinyatakan oleh Dr. Deb tadi. Okey, kajian ini telah melaksanakan secara sebenarnya ada kuantitatif juga, tapi kami fokus secara fokusnya kepada kualitatif, yang mana kami menggunakan dua metod utama, iaitu focus group discussion dan juga kami guna interview, yang mana kita mempunyai borang sidik bersifat semi-structure interview. Dan untuk kajian ini kami fokusnya kepada untuk di Kelantan, di kawasan Kesedar, secara khususnya di Jeli sahaja. Kesedar sebenarnya dia ada juga fokus di Gua Musab. Tapi kami untuk kajian ini kami hanya lihat di Jeli sahaja. Okey, untuk mendapatkan sampel, kami memilih 3 sampel yang berbeza. Satu ialah kumpulan agensi kerajaan yang terpilih. Tapi kita ambil pada 2 agensi dalam bracket agensi, iaitu agensi berasaskan negeri dan juga agensi berkaitan dengan federal ataupun state ataupun persekutuan. Okey, untuk seterusnya kami juga mengambil responden ataupun informan kami daripada SME. SME merujuk kepada kumpulan-kumpulan yang melaksanakan dalam skala yang sederhana berkaitan dengan pertanian dan peternakan di kawasan kajian sahaja. Manakala untuk komuniti, kami juga mengambil komuniti atau farmer ataupun petani yang terlibat secara langsung penanaman ataupun peternakan di kawasan kajian ini. Untuk secara totalnya, jumlah yang telah terlibat dalam kajian ini adalah seramai 45 orang. Okey, next. Okey, saya tidak mahu lihat secara fokus kepada polisi. Ini gambar lapangan dan sebagaimana rakan-rakan yang lain termasuk di Sabah dan Sarawak, pada peringkat awalnya kami banyak guna secara online dengan agensi dan juga SME. Tapi untuk dengan farmers ataupun dengan petani ataupun komuniti, apabila ada kelonggaran kami terus pergi ke lapangan sendiri. Kita lihat sendiri dan kita interview sendiri. Sebab kita faham kekangan mereka dari aspek digital, dari aspek untuk dapatkan data secara online ini bukannya mudah. Jadi kita perlu ke lapangan. Jadi kami terus ke lapangan. Di samping sebelum itu kami menggunakan pendekatan FGD secara online. Okey, next. Okey, sekali lagi saya next. Okey, saya terus kepada finding sebab kalau ikut polisi memang saya yakinlah untuk peringkat state untuk federal kita tahu kita baru saja dilancarkan polisi berkaitan dengan food security dan nak menilai secara sama ada nak menilai secara terus bagi saya belum tiba masanya lah, tapi walaupun kita boleh lihat secara umum saja. Tapi untuk di peringkat Kelantan ini dia terlalu fokus juga ataupun dia mengguna polisi secara teruslah daripada kerajaan federal. Bukanlah dia tidak ada, dia ada perancangan mengikut esko berkaitan tertentu sahaja. Tapi dari sudut pelaksanaan mereka memang fokus menggunakan limak sama dengan agensi peringkat persekutuan. Baik, saya terus kepada hasil kajian. Hasil kajian. Yang ini kita tengok isu-isu ataupun hasil kajian yang berkaitan dengan farmer. Kalau kita lihat di sini, sudah pasti kalau kami interview farmers ataupun petani, pengetahuan mereka terhadap polisi, sama ada polisi secara umum berkaitan dengan pertanian atau peternakan ataupun secara langsung berkaitan dengan food security amatlah lemah. Dalam perkataan lain, kalau ada atau tidak bukanlah itu pertimbangan utama mereka. Kerana apa? Kerana mereka fokus utama mereka adalah kelangsungan, bukannya berkaitan untuk bantu kerajaan ataupun jadi satu bentuk agenda nasional untuk bersama memenuhkan keperluan berkaitan dengan makanan ataupun pertanian untuk peringkat negara. Okey. Dari satu sudut yang sama, dari sudut yang lain juga kalau kita lihat mereka juga menghadapi masalah sama dengan pihak lain, iaitu mereka berhadapan masalah dengan market. Market, apabila sebut pasal market, mereka akan selalu cerita tentang masalah market dan dia ada hubung kait terus dengan isu-isu berkaitan dengan kos pengeluaran. Kos pengeluaran termasuk di sini, kalau kita lihat khas untuk pertanian, dia akan merujuk berkaitan dengan racun dan juga baja. Dan masa kami buat kajian waktu itu, pada akhir tahun lepas dan awal tahun ini, kita dapati kos-kos tersebut memang meningkat. Kalau kami kira secara mudahnya, dia meningkat sehingga di antara 30 hingga 40%. Itu agak tinggi. Dan kami sudah jangkakan berasaskan dengan peningkatan begitu akan menyebabkan kos lain akan turut meningkat. Maksud saya kos lain itu adalah kos-kos berkaitan dengan pengangkutan. Itu belum lagi kos ataupun harga jualan nanti yang terus meningkat. Sebenarnya kalau kita nak kata barangnya tidak cukup, sebenarnya tidak. Barang kita cukup. Kalau kita tengok SSD dan sebagainya, barang kita cukup. Cuma isunya sekali lagi ialah di peringkat input pengeluaran, kosnya meningkat. Itulah realiti yang dihadapi oleh komuniti. Kalau kita kata berkaitan dengan apa yang berlaku di peringkat lapangan. Cuma bagi komuniti juga mereka lihat ataupun petani juga mereka lihat mereka memang perlukan pihak private ataupun swasta untuk membantu meningkatkan lagi bukan setakat pengeluaran, bukan setakat pemasaran, tetapi untuk bantu perkara-perkara lain termasuklah perkongsian teknologi. Mereka akui bahawa mereka masih banyak bergantung pada teknologi yang bersifat tradisional. Kalaulah kita kata bukanlah tradisional yang terlalu melampau tradisional, bagi saya terlampau tu maksudnya memang tanam di atas tanah macam biasa. Kalau kita tengok petani-petani kita dah mula pun nak terus ke depan. Contohnya menggunakan teknologi simple berkaitan dengan fertigasi dan sebagainya. Tapi mereka rasa mereka perlu lebih pada tu. Walaupun kita faham ada segolongan petani yang masih lagi selesa dengan ilmu pertanian yang berasaskan konvensional tersebut. Kemudian kalau kita tengok antara cabaran seterusnya, kalau tengok polisi-polisi yang sudah ada, menurut petani kita dia mengatakan bahawa polisi-polisi tersebut tidak mengambil kira bagaimana untuk mengawal lambakan ataupun banyaknya produk-produk yang diimport daripada Siam, daripada Thailand dan sebagainya yang menyebabkan barangan yang dikeluarkan oleh mereka kurang laku dalam braket disebabkan oleh barang mereka biasa lebih tinggi harganya berbanding dengan import. Mungkin disebabkan teknologi ataupun banyaknya bilangan produk yang dijual oleh import tadi. Dan bagi mereka, barang-barang import ini tidak terlalu dikawal oleh kerajaan menyebabkan menjadi mereka sukar untuk mendapat pertanian, dan bagi mereka kalau keadaan ini berterusan, ia boleh menyebabkan mereka akan gagal untuk meneruskan pertanian yang telah mereka hasilkan. Okey, dari sudut itu juga mereka lihat mereka tidak mampu untuk keluarkan dalam skala yang lebih besar. Sebab tu saya maklumkan sebelum ini lebih awal bahawa mereka sebetulnya lebih banyak fokus kepada pengeluaran yang untuk survival, walaupun memanglah untuk survival tu ada lebihan. Tapi kalau kita lihat mereka ada bermasalah dengan perkara yang lain. Contohnya apabila disebut saja survival, mereka lebih kepada untuk cukup makan. Jadi bila cukup makan, mereka tidak boleh beza di antara untung bersih, untung kasar, menyebabkan mereka tak boleh terus untuk kontrol, untuk cycle seterusnya. Jadi apa akan berlaku? Apa yang akan berlaku, mereka tetap akan bergantung kepada agensi-agensi, sama ada untuk mulakan balik dengan modal ataupun untuk mulakan balik dengan dapat input-input pengeluaran lain. Contohnya baja yang bersubsidi, racun dan sebagainya. Okey, baik. Seterusnya, berkaitan dengan polisi, kalau kita tengok polisi, outcome pada polisi ini, kita lihat bahawa bagi mereka, bagi komuniti, mereka dapati bahawa memang masalah ketara dalam polisi ialah polisi itu tidak memantau pelaksanaan. Maksudnya, sekali lagi, polisi itu tidak dipantau, bukan tidak memantau, tidak dipantau oleh agensi-agensi berkaitan. Tapi berkaitan pemantauan ini, kita ada suara lain dari perspektif agensi ataupun pegawai di lapangan. InsyaAllah saya akan kongsikan nanti. Okey, sekali lagi, walaupun petani kita nampak seolah-olah level mereka begitu, tapi mereka percaya bahawa polisi yang sedia ada perlu dinilai balik. Perlu dinilai balik dengan beberapa penambahbaikan. InsyaAllah berkaitan penambahbaikan ini saya akan kongsikan di bahagian belakang berkaitan dengan cadangan-cadangan yang akan datang. Okey, next. Berkaitan dengan input yang kami dapat daripada SME juga, kami dapati bahawa mereka pun sama juga. Mereka nak kerajaan, mereka sebenarnya kalau kita tengok SME, mereka sedar, mereka lebih jelas berbanding dengan petani berkaitan dengan polisi, berkaitan dengan hala tuju pertanian oleh kerajaan, termasuklah berkaitan dengan food security. Cuma apa yang mereka risaukan ialah mereka nampak banyak lagi pengetahuan mereka kurang, termasuklah skill, termasuklah berkaitan teknologi. Jadi mereka memerlukan guidance, mereka perlukan bimbingan daripada agensi untuk terus ke depan. Okey, cuma dalam masa sama mereka rasa sangsi ataupun rasa bimbang dan juga mereka rasa confused. Sebenarnya apakah pendekatan yang digunakan oleh kerajaan untuk terus mengembangkan pertanian dan peternakan? Ia berlaku disebabkan kami lihat apabila kami teroka lebih mendalam, isu sangat basic sangat, termasuk apabila kita bincang dengan pihak petani, bincang dengan pihak agensi, ia sebenarnya berlaku disebabkan oleh tidak ada interaksi yang kita kata yang dua hala. Kalau berlaku satu hala saja dan tidak mendalam. Tidak mendalam, maksud saya di sini ialah dia bukanlah interaksi itu lebih kepada bagaimana nak selesaikan masalah untuk jangka masa depan. Ia biasanya interaksi berlaku kepada golongan tertentu saja ataupun jika timbul isu-isu yang kecil-kecil saja. Tapi untuk berkaitan dengan hala tuju, berkaitan dengan polisi kerajaan, berkaitan dengan pertanian, peternakan dan juga food security, ia tidak banyak dibincangkan. Okey, seterusnya, kalaulah kita tengok apakah pendekatan bagi pandangan SME kerajaan laksanakan berkaitan polisi, lebih kepada agensi memberikan grant dan juga memberikan bantuan-bantuan khas. Tapi sekali lagi isu yang sama berlaku. Kami nampak benda ni bukan hanya disedar oleh SME dan petani. Sebenarnya oleh agensi pun sama, dia sedar. Isu yang besar memang berulang berlaku ialah berkaitan dengan pemantauan. Dan kalau dalam masa sama mereka tidak nafikan agensi memang terlalu lemah, tidak. Tapi dalam masa sama mereka lihat agensi juga turut cuba membantu walaupun dengan ada kekangan-kekangan tertentu, khususnya berkaitan dengan manpower, pegawai lapangan yang tidak mencukupi. Seterusnya, bagi mereka, agensi perlu lebih banyak berinteraksi dengan mereka, termasuklah dengan farmers tadi, sebab mereka yakin mereka lebih tahu berkaitan dengan apakah yang real berlaku di lapangan dan juga potensi yang boleh dikembangkan. Okey, seterusnya kalau kita lihat dari sudut outcome pula, okey, mereka lihat tidak ada sangatlah usaha kerajaan untuk hubungkan dengan private. Jadi menyebabkan salah satu faktor akan berlakunya masalah lambakan. Kenapa dia kata kaitkan dengan lambakan? Mereka mengatakan bahawa mereka boleh keluarkan je apa sahaja produk yang mereka sedang usahakan. Tapi isu pasaran bagaimana? Salah satu nak selesaikan isu pasaran adalah produk mereka mesti dihubungkan dengan pihak private, pihak swasta yang lain yang membolehkan membeli produk mereka sehingga tidak akan lagi berlaku isu lambakan. Okey, mungkin ada agensi, walaupun perkara ini tak sedap didengar, kita tahu ada agensi khas yang menjaga pemasaran, tetapi kita faham kekangan agensi kita di lapangan menyebabkan banyak juga produk-produk tempatan khususnya yang dihasilkan oleh SME dan farmer tidak dapat dibeli ataupun kalau dibeli pun dengan harga yang rendah. Jadi itu menyebabkan bagi SME dan juga farmer mereka lihat bahawa polisi ini tidak terlalu mencakupi untuk menjaga kebajikan mereka. Okey.
Minta maaf ya Prof.
Ya.
Prof boleh speed up Prof. Dah tinggal masa dah habis. Terima kasih Prof.
Okey, baik. Okey, kalau gitu saya straight terus next slide. Okey. Okey, sekali lagi lah, satu lagi. Okey, next. Okey, apa yang kami dapat belajar daripada kajian ini, satu ialah sudah pasti walaupun perkara yang sangat basic, sangat basic iaitu kepentingannya berkomunikasi, berkongsi pandangan. Ataupun bukan sebenarnya berkongsi pandangan dah level yang ketiga bagi kami. Level yang pertama ialah berkongsi informasi berkaitan dengan polisi itu. Walaupun mungkin agensi itu tidak faham, SME itu tidak faham ataupun petani tidak faham. Tapi proses itu akan berlaku dan mereka akan faham juga akhirnya. Cuma kalaulah nak lebih mudah faham, kita menggunakan bahasa-bahasa mereka secara mudah. Contoh inflasi. Mungkin kita kata inflasi susah nak difaham oleh masyarakat. Tapi mungkin kita boleh guna istilah kenaikan harga barang. Contoh, kita boleh gunakan istilah yang sudah mudah untuk kita berkongsi dengan masyarakat khususnya dengan SME dan petani dalam konteks ini. Okey. Seterusnya bagi kami adalah penting kita melibatkan stakeholders untuk semua peringkat. Sama ada dari peringkat membina polisi, melaksanakan polisi dan seterusnya, memantau dan juga menilai polisi. Dan antara perkara yang pendekatan yang penting walaupun seringkali dinyatakan tapi bagi saya sangat lemah lagi dilaksanakanlah menggunakan partnership punya approach. Yang mana partnership ni kita melibatkan semua stakeholders termasuklah di peringkat komuniti, masyarakat, petani, stakeholders yang lain untuk bersama menilai, melihat, terlibat dengan polisi berbanding menggunakan pendekatan yang ada iaitu top down. Maksudnya ialah agensi semua tahu. Dan yang seterusnya ialah komuniti, saya lihat perlunya agensi dan juga pihak-pihak berkaitan mula percaya bahawa komuniti kita, farmer kita, SME bukannya objek. Mereka adalah subjek. Mereka cepat belajar sebetulnya. Jadi apabila mereka cepat belajar, kita juga faham mereka sentiasa berkembang. Jadi banyak input yang perlu kita dapat dari mereka. Seterusnya, last kali, kesimpulannya berkaitan apa yang kami dapat belajar ialah pentingnya berkaitan dengan monitor ataupun pemantauan. Walaupun polisi itu bagus sekalipun, jika tidak ada pemantauan, ia tidak akan ke mana. Dan last kali, next, apa yang kami lihat ialah next. Okey, cadangan. Okey, cadangan kami di sini saya tak naklah tunjuk SSR sebelum tu. Okey. Satu ialah kita perlu bukanlah nak suruh kita menilai membentuk balik, tidak, tapi belum terlambat dan masih boleh lagi kita jadikan polisi-polisi ini sentiasa dinilai oleh semua pihak. Dia bukannya hanya dinilai oleh pihak agensi sahaja. Dan sekali lagi dia mengulang benda yang sama bagi saya ialah stakeholders mesti terlibat sama dalam secara rasmi, secara formal untuk menilai polisi-polisi yang sudah ada. Okey, juga tiba masanya juga kita melihat balik walaupun Green Book Plan ataupun perancangan buku hijau ni dah lama dan dah tak laksana dah pun, tapi ada perkara-perkara yang baik yang kita boleh ambil dan kita boleh kembangkan dan kita boleh tambah inovasi daripada buku hijau ini. Okey, mengulang nombor 3 dan 4. Dan last sekali lagi sebagaimana saya lihat contoh kami terlibat dengan kemiskinan di peringkat daerah ataupun di peringkat jajahan, biasanya ada fokus group setiap bulan berbincang tentang kemiskinan. Jadi adalah lebih baik juga, saya yakin sebenarnya dah dilaksanakan. Diadakan juga perbincangan khas berkaitan dengan pelaksanaan polisi untuk yang mana melibatkan farmers, melibatkan agensi, melibatkan stakeholders lain, berbincang tentang pelaksanaan pemantauan
Hello, Prof.
Hello.
You're breaking up.
Oh.
Hello, Prof. I think we should wait for a few minutes until Prof comes back. Hello, Prof. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you please?
I think your line is cut off. Dear participants, can you please bear with us until we get back to Prof? Dear participants, I hope you can bear with us while we are still trying to connect to Prof. Wan.
Hello.
Hello, Prof.
Ya, sorry, dia kehilangan internet.
Okay.
Okay,
Your line
baik.
was cut off. Yes, you can continue with point number 5, Prof, please. Yeah.
Okay, ini sama
But
juga.
just to let you know that we are really seriously running out of time. So,
Okay. Baik,
thank
kalau
you,
nombor
Prof.
5 ini tak ada apa. Sebenarnya sekali lagi lah kita perlukan sangat pembincangan secara regular di peringkat distrik, di peringkat daerah. Maksudnya pelibatan semua stakeholders. Walaupun nampak kecil, tapi impak yang sangat besar. Contohnya pada dalam pengurusan kemiskinan. Sorry, saya masuk sikit pengurusan kemiskinan. Kita lihat salah satu cara yang paling berkesan ialah sentiasa ada pembincangan di lapangan yang melibatkan UPEN, unit perancangan ekonomi, melibatkan pejabat daerah dan mengumpulkan semua stakeholders yang berkaitan dengan pertanian, peternakan di lapangan. Okey, itu saja saya rasa untuk Kelantan. Mungkin boleh saya sambung terus untuk Terengganu.
Yes, please
Okay,
proceed, Prof.
Okey, baik. Okey, untuk Terengganu, kami buat next. Okey, untuk Terengganu. Okey, untuk Terengganu lebih kurang kami melaksanakan kajian ini di kawasan Ketengah, Ketengah. Tapi sekali lagi, kami bukanlah menilai kajian ini bukanlah menilai keberkesanan Ketengah ataupun kesedar. Tidak. Dia lebih kepada kita menjadikan sebagai satu kes, kita lihat bagaimana tersusun ataupun program-program yang ada dalam kawasan-kawasan Ketengah. Okey. Bilangan peserta adalah sama. Kita melibatkan agensi, kita melibatkan SME dan kita melibatkan komuniti atau farmers. Yang mana total kami punya sample size ialah seramai 45 orang. Okey, next. Okey. Okey, next. Okey, untuk sedikit finding berkaitan dengan straightforward kepada farmer. Okey, kami dapati di sini, sekali lagi dia sebenarnya kalau di peringkat komuniti, walaupun memang kami sentiasa cuba tidak akan samakan di antara finding Kelantan dan Terengganu lah, tapi tetap akan jumpa poin-poin yang sama lebih kurang. Kalau untuk peringkat farmer ataupun petani tempatan, mereka memang lebih fokus kepada untuk survival. Itu sahaja. Okey. Cuma bagi mereka ada dua isu yang besar bagi mereka dalam pelaksanaan polisi berkaitan dengan pertanian dan peternakan termasuk food security. Bagi mereka nampak seolah-olah pendekatan adalah sama. Bukannya kalau bila perkenalkan polisi baru, pendekatan pun baru, tidak. Bagi mereka rasa, mereka lihat, mereka alami, walaupun polisi itu nampaknya macam baru tapi sebenarnya pelaksanaan adalah sama. Lebih memerikkan ataupun mereka rasa tidak seronok apabila kerap kali hanya peserta-peserta tertentu sahaja yang dipilih untuk terlibat dengan program-program atau projek yang dilaksanakan oleh kerajaan. Okey, isu-isu yang lain ialah mereka nampak bahawa seolah-olah walaupun perkara ini tidak sedap kita dengar, tidak seronok kita dengar, mereka meragui kadang-kadang keupayaan, qualification pegawai di lapangan. Sebab kenapa kadang-kadang ada pegawai ini masih lagi baru. Mereka banyak teori lebih pada bentuk praktikal. Bagi mereka satu sudut okey, tak ada masalah, mereka tahu. Tapi paling kurang mesti banyak rujuk komuniti itu sendiri tentang apa yang patut berlaku dan seterusnya. Walaupun mereka perlukan juga input contohnya teknologi baru daripada pegawai-pegawai lapangan. Yang kedua ialah berkaitan dengan database. Kenapa isu yang saya bangkitkan tadi ialah mempunyai partisipan yang sama ataupun melibatkan peserta yang sama, ia berlaku disebabkan oleh agensi mungkin tidak mempunyai database dalam bracket komuniti ataupun masyarakat atau peserta yang terlibat dengan pertanian atau peternak di kawasan-kawasan mereka. Jadi ada kes-kes tercicir itu bagi mereka. Okey, seterusnya mereka hadapi sendiri. Mereka tidak kata hanya agensi yang nampak seolah-olah tidak ataupun lemah, tapi sebenarnya partisipan itu sendiri, peserta itu sendiri. Kadang-kadang kalau bahasa Melayu kita panggil hangat-hangat tahi ayam. Dan mereka terlibat sekejap, lepas tu mereka tinggal. Akhirnya nampak huduhnya ataupun nampak tak bagusnya ialah agensi. Sebenarnya yang gagal itu adalah partisipan itu sendiri ataupun peserta itu sendiri. Ini diakui sendiri oleh farmers. Okey. Dan seterusnya bagi mereka nak atau tidak untuk dapat program terbagus atau tidak, mereka mesti ada hubungan baik dengan agensi. Jadi di situ mungkin walaupun tidak sedap didengar, sebab ini adalah finding kami jumpa, tapi bagi mereka itulah apa-apa saja mesti ada hubungan baik dengan agensi. Itu kalau tidak hubungan baik, jadi mungkin susah sikit untuk terlibat dengan apa-apa program. Okey. Dan sudut pelaksanaan polisi juga, kalau kita tengok, sekali lagi dia sama juga dengan qualification tadi. Kita dapati SMP ataupun farmer kata bahawa pegawai-pegawai lapangan tidak sepenuhnya yang mempunyai kelayakan atau mampu untuk membimbing mereka. Dan yang apa mereka bimbang yang lain ialah sudut pelaksanaan kerap kali berubah. Kadang-kadang, ada contohnya kalau di Terengganu ada isu, beberapa isu itu tentang rock melon lah apa semua. Tiba-tiba tukar benda lain pula. Bagi mereka tak sempat mereka nak tukar, nak fokus, tiba-tiba tukar. Bila tukar begitu, sudah pasti akan melibatkan kos. Jadi mereka tidak mampu lagi nak ikut apa perancangan yang dirancang oleh polisi ataupun dirancang oleh kerajaan. Jadi akhirnya apa jadi? Mereka akan buat kerja mereka sahaja ataupun fokus pada yang mereka rasa itu yang mampu mereka laksanakan. Okey, seterusnya kalau mungkin sedikit perspektif yang berbeza. Kalaulah pandangan farmers ataupun petani, mereka mengatakan mereka perlukan orang tengah. Mereka perlukan orang tengah. Tapi bagi agensi kata tidak. Orang tengah perlu dihapuskan. Sebab orang tengah ni seolah-olah mengambil keuntungan yang lampau-lampau. Tapi bagi farmers, bagi mereka, kalau tak ada orang tengah, bagaimana nak jual barang? Sebab mereka hanya mampu keluarkan, buat production sahaja. Tapi tak mampu dari aspek untuk jual. Tak mampu untuk fokus. Malah tidak ada kapasiti sekalipun. Jadi bagi mereka, mereka perlukan orang tengah. Cuma cadangan seterusnya ialah, bagi mereka lah, walaupun sebenarnya saya ada susun di bahagian belakang, wujudkan orang tengah dalam komuniti. Komuniti itu sendiri. Bukannya orang asing, orang luar yang memang nak keuntungan yang lebih tinggi. Okey, next. Okey, dari aspek SME pula, kalau kita lihat, bagi SME, dia kata agensi perlukan lebih clear strategi untuk mengurangkan pergantungan pada import. Mereka yakin mereka mampu boleh keluarkan produk-produk yang diperlukan oleh negara. Tapi dalam masa sama, jikalau ada ancaman pada luar. Maksudnya ancaman pada luar ialah import, barangan import, produk-produk import masuk, tidak mampu menyebabkan perangan mereka, produk mereka tidak terjual. Mereka tidak akan mampu untuk ke cycle seterusnya. Perkara ni dihadapi oleh SME, walaupun SME pun sebenarnya kita kata taklah skala besar, tapi skala sederhana, tapi tetap dihadapi oleh mereka. Okey, seterusnya kalau kita tengok, sekali lagi sama juga. Ini lebih kurang sama kalau kita lihat di sini, sama sedikit isu yang berlaku dengan Kelantan, yang mana mereka tidak nampak banyak ada discussion di antara Kelantan, dan agensi dengan SME. Okey, yang seterusnya bagi mereka, food security punya policy ataupun berkaitan dengan pertanian mesti dikaitkan dengan polisi-polisi yang lain. Termasuklah polisi-polisi berkaitan dengan teknologi. Contohnya polisi berkaitan dengan 4IR dan sebagainya. Mesti juga dikaitkan dengan food security dan juga teknologi makanan. Bagi mereka, bila ada connection di antara polisi ini, barulah bukannya kerja in silos berlaku. Maksudnya bukan agensi, hanya agensi tertentu saja akan fokus untuk bantu mereka dalam aktiviti pertanian. Okey, bagi mereka, ini walaupun tak sedap, sorry saya minta maaf agensi. SME ni berkata bahawa polisi spirit too weak. Dia kata sebenarnya semangat polisi adalah sangat lemah. Lebih cantik pada kertas, bukannya sudut implementation. Okey, malah bagi mereka tidak tahu pun apakah hala tuju. Mereka tahu dapatlah ada juga maklumat, tapi tidak dinyatakan apakah hala tuju. Tapi apabila kami teroka, sebenarnya sama je berlaku dengan farmers tadi, iaitu kerap berubah. Kerap berubah sebenarnya ia bukanlah sebenarnya agensi itu sengaja berubah. Dia adalah pertimbangan tertentu. Okey. Seterusnya, next slide. Okey. Okey, apa pandangan agensi? Okey, sebenarnya agensi pun sedar bahawa mereka pun tak boleh kerja secara bersendirian ataupun working in silos, tidak. Mereka juga bercuba bekerja dengan agensi-agensi lain. Malah itu perkara biasa, mereka bekerja sama dengan agensi lain. Cuma mereka sedar bahawa ada juga birokrasi yang perlu mereka lalui. Dan birokrasi ini bagi pandangan agensi, ia boleh berubah ataupun dia boleh ditambah baik dari semasa ke semasa. Khususnya contoh, kalau masa kami buat kajian masa PKP, ada isu tentang nak bawa masuk barangan lah, ada berkaitan dengan pihak polis, ada berkaitan dengan pihak sepadan dan sebagainya. Bagi mereka itu antara ketara isu birokrasi. Tapi lepas peristiwa begitu, nampaknya berlaku perubahan. Maksudnya birokrasi itu semakin mengurang dan mereka dapat kerja dengan lebih baik. Okey, bagi agensi, apabila mereka nak melaksanakan polisi, mereka berhadapan dengan 7 isu. Satu berkaitan dengan manpower tadi, kurangnya manpower untuk memantau program-program di bawah mereka ataupun kawasan-kawasan mereka yang besar bagi mereka. Dan mereka lihat bahawa kawasan mereka sekali lagi agak besar. Bukannya kecil, bukannya satu kampung, tapi satu daerah. Satu daerah ada kampung, ada mukim dan sebagainya. Dan mereka juga hadapi perkara yang sama. Bukanlah mereka tidak mahu membantu MSME atau farmer. Mereka juga percaya bahawa produk-produk komuniti berhadapan dengan persaingan dengan produk-produk import. Seterusnya mereka perlukan juga kerjasama dengan SME, dengan farmer. Sebab bagi mereka bukan semua mereka tidaklah sembunyikan maklumat. Mereka sampaikan juga, tapi kadang-kadang ada juga berlakunya konflik di peringkat lapangan. SME nak lain, farmer nak lain, agensi ada fokus lain, menyebabkan berlakunya konflik, menyebabkan banyak perkara yang tidak boleh dilakukan secara bersama. Seterusnya isu adalah berkaitan dengan infrastruktur dan seterusnya berkaitan dengan R&D. R&D bagus kalau kita tengok berkaitan pertanian, Mardi pun ada dan sebagainya. Cuma kita dapati bahawa apabila SME pun agu, farmer pun agu, dia kata kadang-kadang kajian itu tidak fit dengan apa yang realiti yang berlaku di lapangan. Jadi mereka perlukan kajian-kajian yang lebih realistik yang boleh membantu mereka. Dan seterusnya mereka sedia akui bahawa ada pegawai yang luar pada kapasiti mereka. Luar pada kapasiti mereka. Okey, seterusnya kalau kita tengok berkaitan dengan hubungan dengan pihak private ataupun private sector, mereka tahu, mereka akui bahawa mereka juga ada kekangan untuk menghubungkan dengan pihak private. Salah satu sebabnya bagi mereka ialah sebenarnya SME dan juga agensi ataupun farmer kita ni belum cukup bersedia. Kadang-kadang kalaulah agensi nak berhubungkan dengan private sector, katalah dia perlukan amount tertentu. Belum tentu SME dan juga farmer mampu untuk berikan kepada dalam market. Itu antara isu-isu yang besar yang berlaku. Dan sekali lagi mereka banyak juga masih lagi berbincang tentang jihad melawan orang tengah ataupun kita jihad melawan orang tengah ni bagi mereka adalah penting. Cuma dari satu sudut ialah kita juga perlu mengambil kira pandangan daripada pihak SME dan juga farmer yang mana orang tengah tu perlu kerana mereka tidak mampu fokus kepada dua perkara dalam sama, iaitu production dan juga marketing. Mereka tidak mampu. Okey, next. Okey. Sekali berkaitan dengan apa yang kita dapat belajar daripada hasil kajian ini, kita nampak fokus yang tidak sama di antara agensi, SME dan juga farmers. Tak sama. Maksudnya, sekali lagi, mungkin kalau farmers ni fokus lebih pada survival, walaupun mereka kata okey pentingnya isu berkaitan dengan food security di negara kita. Tapi dalam masa yang sama, dia tidak sama, tidak fit dengan apakah kerajaan nak. Contohnya kecukupan makanan, jaminan makanan untuk dalam negara. Itu antara perkara yang kita lihat, perkara yang besar. Kedua ialah, sudah pasti, benda yang sama. Interaksi di lapangan. Interaksi di antara agensi dengan farmers dan juga SME. Itu kurang kurang berkesan. Kalau berlaku sekalipun, sekali lagi kebanyakan satu hala dan berlaku secara yang play safe. Play safe maksudnya nak mengelakkan konflik sehingga akan ada maklumat-maklumat tertentu sahaja diambil. Itu antara menyebabkan rasanya kurang seronok di kalangan di lapangan. Okey. Dan juga bagi stakeholders lain, SME, farmer dan sebagainya, mereka rasa suara mereka tidak didengari untuk membentuk polisi. Bagi mereka juga berkaitan dengan research mestilah berasaskan apa yang diperlukan di lapangan. Apa yang realiti di lapangan, apa yang berpotensi di lapangan. Bukannya kita sekadar nak teroka benda yang baru, tapi apabila nak dilaksanakan di lapangan, ia tak mampu dilaksanakan. Dan akhir sekali ialah berkaitan dengan pemantauan. Itu antara isu besar yang kami jumpa, merantasi semua pihak, merantasi semua stakeholders, menyatakan benda yang sama, cantik, walau mana pun sekalipun polisi, jika tidak ada pemantauan, jika pemantauan lemah, maka polisi itu dianggap sebagai tidak berjaya. Okay, next, last. Berkaitan dengan cadangan. Okay, cadangan kami satu ialah sekali lagi, walau tak kira macam mana pun, kita mesti pastikan ada dihubung jalinkan di antara kepentingan nasional, agenda nasional dengan kemampuan dan keupayaan serta fokus di kalangan SME dan juga petani kita. Kena buat macam mana pun sebab kita rugi sumber. Kita rugi potensi. Kenapa? Kalaulah kita sibuk dengan import, betul lah ada perkara yang perlu kita import, ada yang kita tidak mampu. Tapi kita akan kekurangan pada masa hadapan banyak perkara. Contohnya dengan sudut kualiti, dengan sudut kita nak bantu komuniti kita sendiri. Contohnya farmer kita ramai yang miskin. Jadi kita tak mampu untuk basmi kemiskinan melalui pertanian. Yang seterusnya berkaitan ialah mesti kita agihkan maklumat, sampaikan maklumat. Sekali lagi benda yang sama, walaupun mereka tak faham sekalipun, tapi insya-Allah mereka akan tetap akan belajar, lama-lama nanti mereka akan faham. Dan mereka stakeholders mesti terlibat. Walaupun kadang-kadang sakit telinga ataupun kadang-kadang kita cakap benda lain, dia faham benda lain, dia jawab benda lain, paling kurang kita mesti libatkan mereka. Jika dengan pelibatan mereka pun dalam bracket gagal, barulah kita boleh kata kegagalan ni berlaku dengan disebabkan oleh kita bersama. Bukannya hanya agensi, bukan hanya SME, bukan oleh petani. Yang keempat ialah kita mesti memperkasakan balik ekosistem kita untuk berkaitan dengan pemantauan, juga berkaitan dengan market, khususnya kepada dalam kalangan farmer kita. Yang saya maklumkan tadi, kebanyakan farmer kita bukanlah orang yang berada, bukan berdapatan tinggi. Sebaliknya ada yang berpendapatan rendah dan juga miskin. Last sekali ialah polisi yang sudah ada, kita mesti tengok balik dengan cara pelibatan semua, dan kita tak boleh nampak semua polisi kita dah sempurna, memang tak boleh. Dan saya yakin agensi pun tahu, agensi pun sedar dan agensi pun memang buat begitu pun. Cuma bagi saya mesti ada kekuatan, keupayaan dan kehendak untuk kita bersama dalam isu polisi ini.
Minta maaf, Prof.
Ya.
Minta maaf, Prof, tapi masa dah tamat. Boleh Prof briefly summarize? Terima kasih.
Okey, saya rasa itu saja. Terima kasih. Tak ada suara pun.
Prof. Okay, thank you so much, Professor Wan, for the very interesting finding from both states, from Kelantan and Terengganu. And I'm very, very sorry to cut you off. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank all our state collaborators for their interesting findings that they have presented. Now, I would like to call Dr. Nurul Huda Muhammad Satta to present the findings from the second part of the project based on the town hall observations, and at the same time, Dr. Edmund Terence Gomez to discuss some recommendations. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Diana. Also, thank you to all state collaborators for presenting and sharing all interesting findings from the states. And as mentioned by Dr. Deboshri, we have also went for town hall meetings with all stakeholders. With all stakeholders at the 4 states. So this is basically the findings that we found from the ground, and some of the points basically actually strengthen or reiterate, re-emerge from the findings of our state collaborators. So there are so many issues that emerge or that have been raised in the Am I audible? All right, okay, okay, thank you. There are many issues actually emerged, right, when we went for our town halls and also the field work. But we would like to just present some key findings, and we put it in three themes. There are land issue, and second one is marketing issue, and the third one is the institutional coordination. So I think these issues actually have been also discussed by the state collaborators just now. So it's kind of like summary as well of what have been found by the 4 states. So we look at the first one. This is the most fundamental issue related to food production is the land itself, because land is, as we know, the important factor of production in agricultural sector. And any conflicts arises from the land use itself will basically influence the ability of agricultural sector to further grow, and also, of course, will affect the food production. There are some key matters that we would like to raise. The first one is the fact that land itself is a state matter, and it's then the policy, while policy can come from the federal, but whatever that when it comes to the implementation itself, then it depends on also the relationship sort of like with the state, because state that is the one that is controlled the land, and whatever policies that federal agency has to help boost the production of our agriculture produce, but then it can be easily held back if by the state government. And we see also some conflicting interests, as have been also presented by our state collaborators, that in terms of land use, when you talk about whether we want to go for crops, industrial crops, or it's related to if we want to use the land for residential and so on. So it's going back to the ability of the stakeholders. Of course, if the state itself, if they want to, of course, if they want to invest, and use the land, they must, of course, they want to invest in a project that brings a lot of revenue, right? So this conflicting interests exist because of this first land issue over here. And the second one is in terms of ownership. There are two things here. The first one is because of the small land holding of the farmers, that basically impedes the growth of agricultural food productivity. And the second point related to ownership is the most of the farmers who basically have only temporary land ownership would not, or will be reluctant, I would say, to grow further because of the fear of losing the land and so on. So these are the two points that related to land ownership that we see from the ground that can basically affect the production of agro food. And of course, the final point related to land has been discussed extensively by the state collaborators, that is in terms of the infrastructure itself, whether in terms of roads, drainage, water supply, and so on. So these are also put it under the first theme that is related to land. So this is also an issue everywhere. Not only in Sabah and Sarawak, but also in Semenanjung. So that is one very important issue that should be looked into by all the stakeholders. And next one, we have marketing issue. And under marketing, we have two key concerns. The first one is in terms of keeping the cost of production down, because based on the presentations as well from the stakeholders, state collaborators, we see that there's an insufficient technological know-how, and also adoption of machinery and equipment for farming and harvesting, which affect the cost of production of the farmers. So there are, of course, efforts towards the adoption of latest technology, for example, drones. But then it will always come back to the farmers themselves in terms of the know-how and also in terms of the financial support that they can get. Because investing in this kind of machinery and technology will also involve will also affect them financially. Second one, related to marketing, is the cost of compliance and certification, because if the product is going to be marketed, whether outside the boundary of their own even state or even district, let alone going for international market, we need some sort of certification, right? The easiest one is what we have the good agriculture practice so that involves cost for the farmers as well. So that is also one of the important findings that we have from the ground. And of course, this is contemporary issue, that is the high cost of agricultural inputs, because most of the agricultural inputs are imported, and we are basically being affected by what happens in Ukraine and Russia and so on. So that is looking into the cost of fertilizer and also cost of pesticides. And the second one related to marketing, which also this is also the main issue from all the 4 states. That is the strategies to reach the markets, because so far what we have seen, the policy initiatives mostly focusing on production. I mean, the target is like to produce this much of output, but then after production, something is missing, after that. So that is one aspect that needs to be also tidied up by policymakers as well as the implementers. And because farmers, they have little knowledge of how to reach domestic and especially foreign markets. Related to that, then if we're talking about middlemen, because they don't have, the knowledge to reach the market, they don't actually know the market itself maybe, so then they will need to depend on the middlemen. So there is a conflicting view overall of middlemen. Just like as Prof. Wan has mentioned just now, the agency want to abolish middlemen, but actually from the ground, they see the importance of middlemen. So if you want to have a policy intervention, then we have to, think about how to basically, govern middlemen to help the policy, to help the farmers. And we also found that even though these products, the unique agro products, are perhaps not really significant if you're talking about the whole for the effort towards food security, but we do find that these unique agro products they need helps in terms of support in terms of production, especially marketing. And what is interesting is that wherever we go to the ground, we always find a unique product from the local local farmers. So these products can basically be marketed as premium product, which really can help the farmers to boost their income. So that is also maybe because of the small scale production, so that's why we see little support from the government for these unique agro products. And of course, we talk about infrastructure just now. When we talk about land, then also infrastructure issue is also there in terms of accessing the market, right, for the farmers. And this is particularly true if we are talking about the rural areas, right? And finally, we look into this institutional coordination. It's not only looking at federal-state relations, but also federal relation among ministries, just like mentioned by Dr. Wan just now. One policy should support the other. right? So we have agriculture policy, but then how do the education, ministry and how do mostly support the agriculture policy is also important. And we also have state relation and federal state relations. So these are all the institutional what we call that ecosystem that needs to be improved further. So we put this into two set of problems. The first one related to agency, and the second one related to the beneficiaries. Beneficiaries means the farmers and SMEs. So if we're talking about agency themselves, when we look into this issue here, is more coordination needed, right, to proper manage the implementation of the policies and also the marketing, the duties of the different agencies, because there are so many agencies involved. When we talk about agriculture, right, it's not only MAFI but other. It's basically involved. Education is involved mostly, and also the what we call that SME, ministry related to SME. So that there must be there is. We don't say that there's no coordination at all, but it can be further strengthened to make sure that it support the entire industry itself. And there's an issue of competing priorities. It also has been mentioned a few times that whether they want to proceed with food security, or do we want to proceed with industrial crop production. So there's a priority. Competing priorities even among the different ministries as well. So then that creates competition over scarce resources such as land and also financial resources. And we also found that agriculture or food production, or in fact food security itself, is actually not explicit focus area of the agency. These agencies basically related to and provide helps to farmers, but then because it's not explicitly there as the as the focus of the agency itself, or as an objective, or as a key performance indicator, therefore the agency would then use that as a reason, not when we talk about support, then we say that, well, we are focusing on such and such. So then it actually creates a lot of confusion for the stakeholders, especially the farmers and also SMEs. And Prof. Wan has mentioned about working in silos just now, and that's also again what we found when we went to the ground, that agencies are only focusing on their areas of concern. So the whatever the effort might not be supporting each other. And the also one issue is the direct market intervention by the agencies, GLCE, that create unnecessary competition. So they should be helping the farmers or SMEs, but but instead of that, the agencies themselves involved in the market directly by providing what we call that providing the products, agriculture products, then that create competition among the agencies and also the farmers. Sorry. One more, sorry, Prof. And there's beneficiaries problems related to beneficiaries, unclear and incomplete information about state and federal policies. And then there's a procedure and communication channels that is also unclear, so that actually that's actually indirect cost to the farmers. That is also why when we went to the ground, farmers are requesting for one-stop center where all agencies are there, and then they can actually have know where to channel their issues and get information. And again, the issue of SME inadequately invest in production, distribution, and organization due to inadequate state support and incentive for R&D to move up the ladder. This is also important because most of the helps are given to micro SMEs, while those who are already trying to get up and trying to move up the ladder does not receive appropriate or adequate amount of support. So then I would pass to Prof. Terence for recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Nurul. So let me bring this all together. What we did was we wanted to identify what are the key problems with the public delivery system. I'm going to divide this final 5 minutes that I have now basically to talk about two dimensions, state and society. Let's start with the state. What is very clear from the presentation of the 4 case studies, the 4 states, in fact, the issues overlap. As you can see in the presentation by Dr. Nurul, she basically identified on 3 core areas that we saw. There are many issues, but she identified 3 core areas that we felt we want to discuss. Land, the land issue is the primary issue. How do we deal with the land? The federal policies are one thing, but all land issues are dealt with by the state, and there's a serious coordination. The second issue, which is a real problem for the farmers that we saw on the ground, is getting their products to the market. Marketing is a clear issue, is a clear problem. And the third issue, which I'm going to get into now, institutional problems, what we call public-public coordination. Now here, what we are seeing is we're looking at organizational problems from 3 domains. Within the federal system, there are too many ministries, and each ministries have their own agencies, and there's a lack of coordination there. Within the state, there are a lot of agencies too, which also have their own coordination problems. And then we have federal state. Federal state is supposed to be very important, and the key institutions at the federal level, which is supposed to link with the state level, at the federal, it's supposed to be EPU. And EPU is supposed to, the Economic Planning Unit is supposed to have a direct link with the SEDCs. But given the variety of institutions that prevail, this is leading to a serious problem in getting the implementation of the policies done properly. So here we have interdependent subsystems within a single public delivery system, which is just not working effectively together to ensure that the policies reach the ground. The second part, which we really have to discuss, is there must be some kind of dialogue between federal and state on land use. There is a serious problem here because we have a federal system where we have 13 state governments. The fact of the matter is the federal government is led by one party or one coalition, while at the state level we have, in the last election, for example, we had about 8 different parties controlling the state governments. And this, in fact, has also contributed to a lot of coordination between federal and state governments. So as you saw, Sabah has got one party, Sarawak has got one party, and Terengganu and Kelantan have another party, which tend to differ from the parties at the federal level. And we have a constant change of governments over the past 4 years. So these problems are also then problematic because in terms of what is the level of discussion between the parties themselves, which control state governments, which may have differing interest in terms of the policies at hand. The third issue which we found, which is a serious problem, is land size. The land holdings are small. So even if we have farmers who want to increase production, they cannot, because they cannot expand the land size. We found in many areas that the land on one hand is productive, and right next to it, there's idle land. And there's nothing much that the farmers can do in terms of ensuring that this idle land contributes to, can be used for further production to increase the output. And this is a state matter. The state has to intervene to find ways and means to deal with these idle lands on the ground to ensure that the production can then thereby be increased. The third issue, or the fourth issue, which I feel we have to stress is this. We have relevant bodies on the ground. We have statutory bodies, for example, we mentioned Kesedah and Ketenggah and Terengganu and Kelantan. And what has not been mentioned so far is the role of developmental financial institutions, institutions such as SME Bank and Agro Bank. Now here, there's supposed to be an industrial financial linkage. That is the purpose of these development financial institutions. Their role is to get the financing down to the ground to help build the agro-based industries. And we found very little of that. In fact, we found hardly any discussion going on in terms of financing from such developmental-based institutions to the ground to help increase production among the companies. And finally, in terms of statutory bodies, we found statutory bodies also create GLCs, create their own companies. Now, the purpose here of the GLCs or the statutory bodies is to support agro-based industries. But there seems to be a differing focus now in terms of the role or that these statutory bodies and GLCs have to play. Their role now is also about revenue generation. And this is leading to competition with rural firms. So this is a serious problem. The GLCs and the statutory bodies have to be very clear what their role is in terms of what their role is on the ground and what is also the role of the GLCs. My question here, which I have raised also on the ground, is do these statutory bodies really need GLCs? Why is there a need for them to create these GLCs when they themselves should be playing the role that these GLCs that they created are now doing? Can we go to the next? I'll now move on to the next part where what we call the public-private compact, society, state-society relations. Now here, and you heard it repeatedly from the 4 state presentations, there is a problem with regards to communication. The communication between state agencies and communities on the ground. And here, one recommendation which kept coming up was the need for a one-stop center. And I feel that is a very valid recommendation made by farmers themselves, that there should be a one-stop center rather than running from one agency to another located in different parts of the city, which is a serious problem for the farmers. And what that means also is if we have a one-stop center, there can be better coordination between the different agencies, which now, as I said earlier, is a serious problem that we are seeing with the public delivery system. The second point, and this is a very important point, enterprise development. Enterprise development, if we have enterprise development, we have sectoral growth. But the problem here is when it comes to enterprise development, there is no well-structured production-centric model linking mass production, tech innovation, and business organization. By that, I mean business organizations should be able to grow where they themselves are innovative in terms of introducing innovation, which will then increase production. So what we are trying to do is take micro firms and make them larger scale enterprises. I want to put one point on the table. This is a very important point. We have 1.2 million companies, registered companies in this country. Only 1% of those companies now are in the agriculture sector. And many of these firms are micro firms. Now, the problem that we are facing here is that the government seems to be very intent on just dispersing the aid to all firms, rather than focusing on the most entrepreneurial firms and to get them up to the level of being medium-scale enterprises, with the ability now to then go on their own and move forward. In fact, this comes back to the problem of financing. Targeted financing as opposed to just universal financing. There has to be some rethinking on this issue. The same with the subsidies. In fact, I'm glad that the present government, the new government, is talking about this, more targeted type subsidies rather than universal-based subsidies, because the information that we are getting from the state collaborators, is what we have also seen when we went to these 4 states, is that targeted-based subsidies are far better in terms of output compared to universal-type subsidies. And this is coming from the ground. And this is something now the government has also taken note of. This is going to be an important point for the government to implement properly. The next point, which has to be stressed, is we talked a lot of the problems with marketing. We need to have proper links between market-based institutions, those responsible for marketing, and the infrastructure. These are held separately. We have one institution for marketing and we have another institution for infrastructure, and there's no coordination between the two. When you need to bring the two together to ensure the products get to the market quickly. And here we need good infrastructure, and I'm talking not just about roads, I'm also talking about ports, so that we can have domestic and foreign markets created for the products that are now being produced on the ground. So this lack of coordination between marketing institutions and the relevant infrastructure institutions is a serious communication problem that also needs to be addressed to allow the farmers to get their products to the market quickly. And my final point before I close, I just said earlier, the problem is how do we get our SMEs, our firms, into the supply chain? The fact of the matter is today, when we talk about policies, the real issue is about getting these companies into supply chains. Because now we are talking about domestic and global supply chains. You get into the supply chains, through the supply chains, they themselves will know how to increase production in response to changes within the market. There's insufficient attention to getting these companies into the supply chains. And the most dynamic of these companies, once they are within the supply chains, will then also automatically grow on their own and will respond to market changes and innovate accordingly. We are not seeing this happening. I would like to stress this point. We are not here recommending new policies. In fact, we are talking about revisiting some of the old policies. The vendor supply program, for example, was introduced during the Mahathir administration. And it was to address this issue of supply chains and getting them to link up with large enterprises so that they can get into the global market. What happened to these policies? And as you can see from some of the other presentations by the state collaborators, they're making the same point. There are many good policies, but in terms of implementation or ensuring those policies, continuity in those policies and adapting them and tinkering with them as and when needed is not occurring. I'd like to close on this point. Under the 9th Malaysia Plan, during the Abdullah administration, a number of major important policy reforms were presented by this government. There was a lot of targeting on the agriculture-based sector. It's time to revisit some of those policies too, because those policies have not been implemented properly. And one reason, as you can see here, the primary reason for this lack of the implementation of these policies is the public delivery system is in need of a major revamp, a major redesigning. We need to trim the number of organizations, and we also need to ensure that these organizations now deal more coherently with the farmers on the ground. So let me end here and open up this discussion now for question and answers from the audience.
Thank you very much, Prof. Terence and Dr. Nurul Huda for summing up the findings. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are open for Q&A session. You may send your questions through the chat box, or you can unmute your mic and ask the questions to be directed to any of our panels. Yes, I can read the questions, but I will allow anyone, if you want to ask the questions, you can unmute your mic. Okay, while waiting for the questions, I'll just read the question that has been sent to us. Question 1 from Ms. Joanita. The researchers have shown one of the major issues are the age of the farmers. Looking at the policy making point of view, what are the changes or what are the policies that should be introduced in order to encourage young people to venture into agriculture? Young people is the assurance of agricultural continuity, especially in rural areas. So may I ask any of our panelists who would like to answer?
Let me first turn to the state collaborators. Is there any one of you who would like to address this question? Badausi or Rosita?
Can I, Rob?
Yes, go ahead, Rosita.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay, based on our discussion during the town hall in Sarawak last time, these are among the issues that are being raised up especially by the farmers. Right? Okay, so there is some suggestion that given by the farmers, I still remember at the time, that now actually because of now in Sarawak, for example, we are into the digital farming. So that digital farming will be one of the initiatives that can attract the young people to join venture into this agriculture sector. But besides that, they're also mentioning that maybe the government should introduce some interesting scheme. For example, giving the young people like a very well paid salary, maybe to manage the farms or maybe any agriculture project that is under the government or the state level, then that will attract them to be serious and also looking into the potentials of these agriculture sectors to them. And at the same time, at the farmers level, actually, they are thinking that some of agencies, they are offering for many trainings or many workshops that are related to the agriculture, but the workshops and also the training are more into like talking about the technical things, very conceptual, very theoretical, but not into the hands-on base. So they are thinking that it's good if the agencies or related agencies that are giving the offer for this training should bring these young people to the ground so that they can understand the real situations of the ground and also looking into the potential and also what is so interesting about that sector. So that is among the recommendations that have been given by the farmers themselves. Yeah, that's from me, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rosita.
Anyone else wants to speak on this issue? So let me then say a few words. One, can you mute your thing?
Okey, Prof. Okey, saya setuju dengan pandangan tadi, Prof. Sebenarnya gini, saya bahagikan untuk golongan muda ni kepada dua lah. Satu ialah mereka yang memang ada education yang baik. Maksudnya dia sampai dia belajar lebih pada sekolah menengah, dia masuk ada sijil untuk level ketiga, maksudnya dia ada sijil diploma dan sebagainya. Sebab kami jumpa ramai petani-petani yang muda begini, mereka lebih kreatif. Ada juga satu golongan yang mana mereka memang hidup di kampung dengan background, education background dia biasa saja. Dia juga bersungguh. Cuma kalau kita tengok mereka dua-dua ni akan ada kreativiti dan daya yang berbeza. Kalau yang educated punya, mereka akan lebih cuba meneroka pada teknologi yang baru. Jadi apa yang mereka mencari ialah satu, sudah pasti pada insentif itu sendiri. Apakah apabila mereka terlibat dengan pertanian, apakah insentif yang mereka dapat? Walaupun yang biasa, yang golongan yang biasa yang kedua ni sama juga, dia memang tengok apa pendapatan yang akan mereka perolehi. Dalam kataan lain, pelibatan mereka dalam pertanian sudah pasti untuk income lah. Tapi dalam masa sama, mereka sentiasa cuba meneroka perkara yang baru. Contoh, masa kami buat kajian di Jeli dan juga di Terengganu, kami dapati golongan belia lebih kreatif dalam cuba meneroka perkara yang baru, contoh menggunakan AI, walaupun taklah sampai level AI, tapi mereka menggunakan teknologi baru untuk digunakan dalam bisnes masing-masing atau perniagaan atau pertanian masing-masing. Termasuklah dalam pertanian, termasuklah dalam peternakan. Dalam peternakan sehingga mereka menggunakan simple teknologi. Contohnya mereka tengok kambing mereka sihat tak sihat dengan ada cuaca, dengan ada test khas untuk tindakan mereka. Yang kedua, kalau kita tengok teknologi yang berkaitan pertanian, mereka siap ada pantau dengan menggunakan tablet, menggunakan teknologi yang canggih tapi basic. Bagi saya sekali lagi, pelibatan mereka sudah pasti pertama melibatkan pendapatan, kedua insentif, dan yang ketiga ialah apakah agaknya support daripada kerajaan termasuklah dalam bentuk teknologi. Itu sedikit pandangan saya, Prof. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Prof. Wan. In fact, Prof. Wan has taken some of the points which I just wanted to mention. Thank you for that. I'll just repeat it in English. When we went down to the ground, what I would like to focus on is to talk about the success stories. We didn't see many success stories, but we did come across a few. And among the success stories, the people who did well in terms of their thriving in the agro sector were those who had education, as Prof. Wan just said. And that education really helped them in terms of they then knew how to increase production. That education gave them the ability to be able to increase production. New methods were introduced to increase production in spite of small land size. They were still able to do it. The second point, which is very important, was they were also better able to understand the policies, use that understanding of the policy to link up with the relevant institutions to then get access to the incentives created by the government to aid them. So this speaks to the issue of high quality education to those in the sector. I would like to close on this point. The people who were also successful were those people from families on the ground. Many people from the young left, but there were those who stayed behind with high education and knew how to use that education in a way in which to increase production were the ones who really benefited. So here, the point here is that how can we get the young people on the ground, get them the right kind of education so that they will then know how to use the knowledge, the lived experience on the ground with the education that they have to get access to the policies in a far better manner and to implement them more productively. So that's the feedback that we saw from the ground. Can I go to the next question, please?
Okay, next question.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, the next question from Man Salasa. Discussions regarding the overlapping of powers between the strategic agencies of the federal and state governments have been going on for a long time and are still going on. The situation causes uneven implementations, especially related to agriculture. Do the presenters agree that all allocations, funds, programs, and so on are led by the relevant state government agencies to manage them, and of course must be supervised by the relevant federal government agencies? This is because most of the staff or state agencies are more aware of the situations on the ground in their own state.
Okay, that's a very good question. But anyone from the point here that is being made is it's better to leave it at the state level to get the policies implemented better because they are in better touch with the people on the ground. Can I have a response from the state collaborators, please, since this question is really directed at you? What do you think about the suggestion?
Sorry, Prof. Obviously, it's true. Like what you said just now, when you say state, federal, state. So in the end of the day, it boils down to the state because the issue of land is under the state purview. So well, what we found out here is that because you have MAFI from federal who control most of the fund through LPP and the PPK. So the overarching control, the too much control at the federal somehow slow down the process at the state level. Well, but this does not mean that the state at the same time does not have money to expand the food production, but it would be greater. It would be great if the state have the more autonomy in terms of managing their own resources. I guess this one is, I mean, the writing is on the wall is quite clear because the state can respond swiftly instead of, like IDA is a very good example. It's an extension of the federal agency in the state, right? Like you said, there's a communication issue at times because when it comes to irrigation and drainage, some of it is from federal, some of it from state, and the big project, for instance, like the one that we have in Kota Belud, right? That funding comes from the federal, and the state basically just just decide where is the land, the best place to do it, and sometimes it's difficult for the state to respond certain things if there's a changes of policy, changes of government. So these are the things that actually we should decentralize some of the function, particularly on agriculture. That because in the end of the day, the state control the land, right? And at the same time, I think this is also correspond with the question just now about technology. So the younger generation in Sabah, particularly, correspond with what Dr. Rosita mentioned just now, and also Prof. Wan, is all about income and incentive. So if you don't have a proper technology incorporated in the agriculture sector, it doesn't make the sector, forgive my word, more sexy. It doesn't attract those people to venture into that business, right? So it has to do with the state function. They need more, basically, you need to decentralize most of the function. That's the easiest way to say it, right? So that's what we see from the finding and also talking to the farmers and SME in Sabah.
Okay. Thank you, Firdausi. So you're all for further greater decentralization to get better implementation of the policies. But
exactly.
yes, Prof. Wan,
Prof,
you
saya
wanted
ada
to...
pandangan sikit, Prof, boleh, Prof?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okey, soalan tu saya nak tanya satu je. Siapakah state agensi yang akan pantau? Sebab kebanyakan yang laksanakan projek-projek di peringkat komuniti ataupun masyarakat ataupun di kampung, di daerah semuanya, kebanyakan lah, hampir keseluruhan adalah kalau di yang kawasan kajian kami ini adalah berkaitan dengan federal government. Contohnya kalau kita lihat Jabatan Pertanian bukannya yang state, walaupun kita tahu dia duduklah di state, kita faham. Tapi memantau, melaksana dan juga dan sebagainya adalah mereka. Yang state tu siapa? Kalaulah state tu jelas siapa mereka, dia ada polisi sendiri, dia ada perancangan sendiri, caranya itu sangat baik. Cuma sekali lagi, untuk tempoh yang masa terdekat ni, berdasarkan kajian kami, okeylah idea tu. Cuma sekarang ni siapa mereka? Kalaulah baru nak tentukan sekarang, mereka nak laksanakan sekarang, bagi saya tidak berapa kena. Tapi kalau untuk jangka panjang, kita perkasakan bukan hanya state government, state agency, tapi kita juga perkasakan community. Bagi saya adalah lebih baik perkasa juga community stakeholders tu, SME dan juga community farmers dan sebagainya. Barulah saya nampak dia kerajaan pun tak payah fikir banyak untuk pantau sebab mereka saling pantau memantau. Itu sedikit pandangan saya, Prof. Terima kasih.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Wan. In fact, that's a very good answer. When we say the state, who exactly is the state? Which agencies are we talking about? And which agencies do we want to empower further to ensure implementation and monitoring? Thank you for that. Can we go on to the next question?
Yes, but before I'm reading the next questions here, Prof, I'm going to read a few comments that have been given by our participants. Comments number 1, land problem should no longer be the main issue with the latest technology. The opening of new farms in the highlands should no longer be exempted. The use of new technology may attract young people. Another comment from Mr. Khairuddin said, the size of the land is not necessarily a constraint when technology can be used to increase the yield and the quality of production. And the last comment is from Mr. NFR. The development of technology or innovations with minimal cost is necessary and will greatly help small agro-food entrepreneurs. The issue related to technology is the high initial cost, which may be an additional burden to entrepreneurs, even if they are very interested in using technology in the developed agro-food project. So thank you for to participants who commented. Now I'm going to read the next question from Joanita. Our heavy dependence on imports has also affected the prices of certain crops. This, in fact, has caused many farmers to lose money and finally give up on farming itself, as they are unable to compete with the prices of imports, which came into the country in bulk and through mass production. In fact, prices were even much more cheaper than local farmers produce, despite subsidy. How does policy making will be able to aid farmers to compete with a globalized pricing?
Okay. Any comments from the state collaborators on this? Because you have seen the direct impact of the high increase in price of imports, which is then leading to a high increase in cost of production. Comments, please. Anyone who would like to start first? Rosita? Rosita, you're on mute.
Okay, from our findings, this is also among the issues that have been raised by the farmers since we are also asking why they are not go further into like exporting the products and so on to the outside market. Then the thing is about the total of the production itself, because of some of the farmers, they are having a limitation in terms of achieving the certain targets of the total productions in order to enable that products to be exporting to the outside Malaysia and also other regions. So that is why the farmers seems that having the one-stop center as what Prof mentioned just now would be one of the best solution in order to cater this issue, and furthermore will help them to go out from the local market and also expand their production so that it can be produce more and also can be exported to the others. And at the same time, this issue can be also being catered, especially in terms of the imports issue. I mean, for the agriculture product from the outside. Yeah.
What about subsidies, for example, as a means to help keep cost of production down? Do you think that would help, Rosita?
Okay, I think for some of the farmers who maybe they are just starting the agriculture activities, subsidy may seems quite relevant to them, but for those who are who already actively involved in this agriculture activities, some of the farmers think that incentive will be better to them, because they think that subsidy will not change the mentality of the farmers, but incentive will encourage them to be more competitive and also more active, and also having the motivation to produce more in terms of the agriculture productions. Yeah. Right.
Would any of the other two researchers like to comment on this?
Okey Prof, saya ada sedikit pandangan lah. Memang salah satu isu besar ialah berkaitan dengan harga yang import lebih murah daripada harga yang lokal. Saya nampak banyak faktornya. Salah satu faktornya ialah production yang dikeluarkan, kos yang import tu memang dia keluar dalam skala yang besar. Kalau kita tengok farmers kita dalam skala yang kecil saja, dan mereka sebenarnya menganggap berharap daripada yang dia keluar kecil itu dah boleh cover kos untuk mereka dan dapat sedikit keuntungan. Jadi salah satu ubat dalam bracket untuk sementara ialah yang biasa digunakan, sudah pasti kita akan bagi subsidi. Cuma bagi saya subsidi tidak akan berpanjangan. Sebab itulah saya setuju dengan pandangan lain, penggunaan teknologi. Walaupun dia jalannya agak jauh, tapi paling kurang kita ada teknologi dan kita tengok local farmers kita memang mampu guna teknologi. Contoh, dah mula guna drone, dah mula guna AI dan sebagainya. Tapi dengan syarat agensi-agensi berkaitan, termasuklah universiti yang ditekankan oleh agensi farmers dan juga SME, pastikan kajian yang berkaitan dengan pertanian yang dilaksanakan itu memang diperlukan oleh komuniti. Bukannya kita buat satu kajian yang besar yang nampak gah tapi sebenarnya tak ada nilai pada masyarakat, pada petani. Sebab itulah farmers kita dan juga SME kita selalu, kalau di kawasan Kelantan khususnya, selalu bandingkan dengan teknologi pertanian daripada Thailand. Bagi mereka walaupun simple tapi impaknya besar kepada farmer dari aspek kualiti dan juga harga pun. Jadi bagi saya itulah antara sedikit lontaran yang kami nampak di lapangan. Terima kasih, Prof.
Dausi, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I think just one point, Prof. So it has to do with the supply side policy, which is to increase productivity. Yes, we cannot avoid that the price has increased, but this does not mean that we should continue import and forget about our productivity. We have to incorporate technology. We have to increase more people to invest in the food sector and also the young people. The only way to compete with all this import is to increase our production and become more competitive. And the answer lies on technology.
In terms of larger sized enterprises, those who have got both downstream and upstream activities going on, and if they do have that, they can keep the cost. They don't have to import products because they're downstream too. The input dimension is also covered. We didn't find much of that on the ground. What do you think is the issue that is hampering companies from developing both downstream and upstream type activities? I'm raising this point because as I was discussing with my team, we were not able to find one publicly listed company on this kind of food production in this country. It's a serious structural problem. Why have we not been able to do that in spite of the fact that the government has invested so much in terms of incentives as well as created public policies precisely for that endeavor? Can I pose this question now back to you all on the ground, because you've been on the ground, you've seen the activities of the farmers. Can you tell us where is the problem in terms of creating these kind of large-scale enterprises?
Prof, saya sambung sikit, Prof. Baik, saya setuju sangat, Prof. Okey, dia sebenarnya bagi saya lah, saya dan tim bila kami buat kajian, sebenarnya bukan banding. Kebetulan kita dapat maklumat daripada Terengganu dan di Kelantan. Walaupun perkara ni dah basi ataupun dah lalu orang dengar, sebenarnya petani kita termasuklah SME dan seterusnya untuk ke syarikat besar, mereka takut kepada dalam bracket ialah kartel. Walaupun bunyi kartel ini perkara kecil, tapi bila kami berada di lapangan, ianya adalah perkara yang betul. Contohnya masa kami sebenarnya ni perbualan yang luar pada skop sikit kajian lah. Apabila kami pergi bertemu dengan peternak ayam di kawasan Jeli contohnya. Jeli ni famous dengan harga ayam yang mahal. Sedangkan di sanalah paling banyak reban ayam, ladang-ladang ayam yang supply untuk ayam suruh di pantai timur. Tapi harga ayam yang mahal. Tapi apabila kami duduk duduk berbual dengan peternak ayam di Jeli, mereka cerita tentang bagaimanakah kontrol market yang dilakukan oleh kartel. Dia kata itu baru di peringkat dia. Yang mana sebelum ini kalau dibandingkan dengan 10 tahun, margin keuntungan mereka satu ekor ayam boleh nampak sehingga RM1 hingga RM2.50 satu ekor ayam. Sekarang ni hanya dapat margin keuntungan untuk seekor ayam lebih kurang hanya 5% sahaja. Dan kita boleh lihat bagaimana kesannya. Dulu mereka ada pekerja yang mana bekerja untuk mereka. Sekarang ni mereka menggunakan anak-beranak mereka sahaja untuk bekerja. Apa indikatornya? Indikatornya keuntungan mereka tak mampu sebenarnya untuk bayar pekerja di pekerja lain. Jadi walaupun sebenarnya perkara itu kita nampak itu biasa kita dengar. Tapi realiti itu baru berkaitan dengan peternakan. Belum lagi kontrol dari aspek input pengeluaran berkaitan dengan baja, berkaitan dengan racun. Petani-petani kita di kampung, harga mencanak naik. Kalaulah dia boleh kontrol benda tu, bagi mereka boleh pergi jauh lagi. Termasuklah syarikat-syarikat lain pun berani nak melabur, nak pergi lebih jauh lagi. Tapi bila mempertimbangkan risiko begitu, kontrol begitu, ada kata begitu, saya nampak kita takkan boleh pergi jauh, Prof. Itu sedikit pandangan saya.
Yeah, thank you. The point about cartels on the ground, it's a very important point. Firdausi and Rosita, would you like to say anything? Or shall I move on?
Actually, I agree with Prof, because of we also found that the same things happen in Sarawak. Since from the agriculture side itself, there is a lot of problem. Then, of course, to move towards the upstream and upstream level will be another problem that need to be catered. So before to go further, I think the ground side issues must be settled first so that we can move further towards the others level and also other implementation. Yeah.
Okay, can you?
Okay. Assalamualaikum. Boleh saya mencelah dalam this topic?
Ya, boleh. Please go ahead.
Okey, baik. Terima kasih. Saya ingat diskurs petang ini sangat begitu baik sekali ya. Saya tertarik apabila sampai kepada isu ini yang lain-lain tu mungkin sudah biasa didengar. Pertamanya ialah how to build up our SMEs to become the listing company dari segi masa hadapan ya, dan kemudian berkaitan dengan isu import. Saya nak sentuh dua perkara yang selalu sebenarnya nampak di depan mata kita tetapi kita tidak berapa memberi penekanan. Baik, yang pertama tentang isu kartel. Sebenarnya kartel ini dia isu yang real, betul apa yang Prof kita sebut tadi itu, doktor kita sebut tadi itu. Tetapi kita sebenarnya bukan tidak ada SME yang mempunyai potensi untuk di-develop kepada sehingga dia boleh menjadi, mungkin juga boleh disebut one of the cartel later on, ataupun dia pergi kepada listing. Dia ada sebenarnya company-company SME ini dan terdiri mungkin dalam kalangan orang Melayu sendiri, tetapi umumnya coaching system ataupun support structure system untuk membawa mereka ke arah itu tu dia tidak berlaku. Dan biasanya layer untuk membuat keputusan untuk pergi menjadi seorang pemain yang besar supaya syarikat-syarikat SME ini dapat pergi ke, kita kata, kepada listing company, biasanya usaha itu diambil alih semula oleh isu yang dibentangkan tadi. Apa dia? Iaitu pertembungan dengan GLC yang dibina di bawah institusi. Saya berikan contoh kepada semua pendengar. Misalnya di Nafas, Pertubuhan Peladang Kebangsaan, dia ada satu program skim SPADA, skim penternak ayam daging begitulah. So ini sebenarnya hasratnya ialah untuk membina satu support structure yang besar daripada peringkat penternakan, penetasan telur sehinggalah kepada pembuatan daging dan akhirnya hantar kepada market. Tetapi kita tengok apabila kerajaan yang berniaga, dia akan ada isu-isu seperti leaking daripada segi pengurusan, kemudiannya hutang tak bayar sebab bila kerajaan yang menjual ni tak bayar hutang, dia kira tahun depan ambil bajet lain. Jadi perkara-perkara yang membina kepada kepada membesarkan syarikat kepada tahap listing itu, peranan itu diambil oleh peranan GLC yang dibina oleh institusi kerajaan, dan akhirnya syarikat-syarikat SME kita yang punya potensi ni dia duduk di takuk tu je lah. Ini the big issue sebenarnya yang perlu dirombak balik. Yang kedua berkenaan dengan import ya. Sebenarnya import ni dia tidak semua kepada barang makan yang menjadi kritikal. Kita perlu ada fokus kepada isu import. Certain barang ini yang sememangnya mempunyai kadar import yang cukup tinggi. Hakikatnya kita boleh tanam sekiranya kita boleh keluarkan. Sekiranya kita mempunyai satu polisi program yang memfokus kepada peranan agensi. Saya berikan contoh ya. Misalnya kita import bawang tinggi. Kita hakikatnya boleh tanam bawang. Kita tak mungkin kita tak boleh tanam sedangkan Indonesia boleh menanam dengan besar. Tetapi apabila tackle kepada perancangan ini dia menjadi bercapah-capah. Pertubuhan Peladang pun nak buat juga, Jabatan Pertanian pun nak buat juga, kemudian Mardi pun ada buat research juga. Ya, kebolehan pegawai dia yang betul-betul nak fokus tu dia tidak ada. Apa yang berlaku sebenarnya sepatut dibuat macam kita buat di Thailand, macam patutnya Indonesia buat, mengarahkan kepada satu agensi yang besar. Misalnya Jabatan Pertanian, you need to fokus bawang saja. You ada TKPM banyak di peringkat negeri, fokuskan ini. Kerajaan letak dana yang besar untuk tujuan itu, tanam bawang. Within 3 years, saya rasa perkara-perkara yang berkaitan dengan import yang tinggi itu akan boleh diatasi. Dia kena pergi satu persatu kepada jenis kluster tanaman ataupun sumber bahan makanan yang kita import tinggi itu untuk diselesaikan secara fokus agensi. Kalau kita mengharapkan pegawai di bawah yang itulah juga nak tengok ayam kampung, yang itulah juga nak tengok pokok betik, yang itu jugalah nak tengok kepada tanaman sayuran, dia tak jadilah. Jadi kita akan ambil satu langkah yang kecil-kecil sahaja. Itu perkongsian saya nak bagi sikit. Terima kasih. Boleh ya?
I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat the question again. Wouldn't a demand-driven approach make policy success more likely? Economies of scale is only one way to sustain growth. States can organize small farmers according to real market demand, for example, through cooperative for specific crops with free market information. Why are cooperative not much implemented in Malaysia?
I just want to repeat my point. Saya nak mengulang apa yang saya cakap kepada Encik Zame. Sumbangan Encik Zame sangat penting. Terima kasih untuk itu. Sekarang saya balik kepada soalan yang dibangkitkan oleh Puan Yasmin. Who would like to take on the question that Yasmin has just raised, which is a very interesting point, a demand-based approach. Look at market demand and then accordingly we respond. Anyone would like to take this from the ground? My concern with, so let me start. My concern with that approach is that market demand constantly changes. The demands from the market is one which is in a constant state of flux. So to focus on a current market demand may not be particularly feasible or prudent, simply because once the demand changes, then the emphasis on this particular moment then is wasted. So I rather go on products. I rather focus on products which are in constant demand. And food products would be my suggestion, based also from what I've seen on the ground. Would anyone else like to either challenge what I've said? Because you all are the people on the ground, also you would know better. I speak also to the audience. I'm sure there are a lot of farmers among the audience who would like to respond to this. Anyone? No. So, okay. So I take it that response is this. So are there any more questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I think the last one, not much of a questions, but this is comments. But I have one question here. There has been a permanent food production park program, or TKPM, which is Taman Kekal Pengeluaran Makanan under the Ministry of Agriculture. What is the impact of this program? Because the size of the land is given to entrepreneurs or companies.
Which state is that?
Okay.
DOA. Would anyone like to respond to this?
Prof, when we talk about TKPM in Sabah, right? Yes, it's given to some companies, including even Felda is part of it. But what we heard from the farmers and SMEs that sometimes it's a policy, but they don't enforce it. Say because you have palm oil and at the same time you have paddy or you have pineapple or you have banana in TKPM. So since the volume is not there, so why should I do it? It's wasting my money. So TKPM, well, it's a good concept when it comes to enforcement, and it's not really taken seriously by most companies. That is among other things that we heard from, even from the policymaker themselves. They say that, well, these are the stumbling block for TKPM. Well, there are some which is okay, all right, but the impact to address food security is not really pervasive enough.
Thank you for that. We have one final question. I know it's running late.
Prof,
I'm
boleh
sorry.
Sorry.
Would
Boleh
someone
saya
like to speak?
mencela, Prof?
Ya, boleh. Boleh, sila.
I'm Zapa. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Encik Zapa, silakan.
Ya. Saya dari Pejabat Pertanian Ranau, Jabatan Pertanian Sabah. I just want bagi penerangan mengenai konsep TKPM. TKPM ini kita tidak berikan kepada pengusaha ataupun syarikat, bukan kita berikan hak milik, tidak. Kita menyewakan kemudahan yang kita wujudkan kepada pengusaha yang berminat. Okay. Just like in Ranau, we have the Highland VG punya TKPM, which is kami sedia infrastruktur, jalan raya, SPH, struktur pelindung hujan macam tu. So mereka produce tanaman makanan, kalau di Kundasang tu tomato, macam capsicum like that. So itu membantu di dalam menambah pengeluaran. Dan kita menggalakkan konsep keusahawanan di sana. Dan mereka bukan permanen berada di sana. Tempoh sewa kalau macam tanaman kontan, macam sayur, paling lama pun 3 tahun. And then we will cater for another person yang berminat. Kita sewakan, bukan kita berikan. Ya, okey. Kemudian dari segi, kalau boleh, saya mau melihat dari segi peranan pihak kerajaan negeri, macam saya, Jabatan Pertanian Negeri Sabah, dengan pihak federal, seperti PPK, Peladang, Fama. Setiap entiti itu dia mempunyai bidang tanggungjawab mereka masing-masing yang telah digariskan. Like Fama were going for marketing. Like us, we are going for development on the ground. Like PPK, the Nafas, LPP, they are going for their business. They are supplying the fertilizer, the racun. Only cuma kalau dari segi padi, bajak disalurkan melalui Nafas, PPK. Kontrak diambil oleh Nafas, PPK, okey. Racun tambahan semua itu. So pertindihan peranan itu sebenarnya dia macam tidak wujud. Cuma apabila ada tempat-tempat tertentu yang pegawai atau individu-individu di sana dia lebih keen untuk menunjukkan dia hebat, dia akan masuk ke lapangan orang lain. Dia mau menunjukkan kepada bos yang di atas dia hebat. Frankly to said, like IADA di Kota Belud sepatutnya membangunkan kawasan tanaman padi sawah. Tetapi kenapa pula dia pergi menjual, dia pergi komersialkan tanaman padi keladi, dia bikin marketing. itu bukan peranan dia. Like that. Bukan semua tempat dia wujud. Kalau tempat yang paham dia punya peranan masing-masing, tidak akan berlaku pertindihan. Karena di daerah, kalau macam di Sabah, setiap daerah di Sabah dia mempunyai satu jawatan kuasa penyelaras pertanian daerah yang berperingkat di daerah. Dan kami melapor kepada kementerian kami. Dalam jawatan kuasa itu, semua jabatan dan agensi yang terlibat, even Agrobank, Fama, KPD, YUM, PPK, JPS, Veterina, Fisheries, kami akan berkumpul, berbincang di dalam sana setiap tahun, sekurang-kurangnya dalam setahun 1 atau 2 kali kami akan bermesyuarat untuk menyelaras aktiviti yang kami laksana. Dan kami saling bantu-membantu. Just like kami develop Highland Coffee di Ranau. Oke, kami sudah develop di ground. So for marketing, kami akan rujuk kepada Fama, minta bantu kepada Fama. Macam itu. For those yang tahu di mana dia punya tanggung jawab, pertindihan kuasa itu tidak akan berlaku. Pertindihan peranan itu tidak berlaku. So
Okey, terima kasih.
itu situasinya, Dok.
Terima kasih, Cik Zakva. I'm sure there are many more that you want to discuss with us. We are very open if we can have other sessions, but due to the time, I have to cut right now. We have to bring this to the end. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we have ended our sessions, and I'm sure anyone, if you're interested to have a further discussions, you can always come back to us through our emails, and we can have conversations. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of UM team, I would like to, on behalf of the committee members of the Unkwazi Center for Development Studies and from the UM team, I would like to express our gratitude to our funder cast, to all our state collaborators, and also for our participants for your presence and time to be with us today. And once again, thank you. Have a pleasant day ahead. Thank you very much. Can please anyone open your video so we can have a screenshot, especially to all state collaborators who are already here. To all participants, if you can turn on your videos so we can take a picture. Okay, we are still waiting for more participants to open your video. It's good to see you all today. All right, I think it's ready, and our team will take a photo. Smile. Okay, a few more, yeah, because a few more participants are coming. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your participations, and I would like to thank Prof. Wan, Dr. Firdausi, Dr. Rizita for your very interesting findings and for your sharings today. Thank you so much. Goodbye. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank you, Kaz and UM. Bye.
you, everyone.
Oh, Miss Chen.
Thanks, Ms. Chen.